If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21. Pokémon trainer Volo has come to challenge you. After more than 100 years, the Pokeball in Volo's hand was no longer the Hisuian Pokeball but had been replaced with a modern one. It was easy to guess this had to be a newly captured Pokémon. Take this. Seeing the Gible, Hikaru already had some ideas in mind. He reached into his bag and took out a small berry with a striped red exterior, somewhat hard, and resembling magma. Yo! Hunch was eager for battle. After 1,000 years away from combat, it was determined to secure its first victory. However, when the red berry was handed over, Hunch hesitated. What kind of berry is this? I've never seen it before. Also, how am I supposed to carry it? Just tuck it into your scabbard. You have to unsheath yourself when fighting anyway. This berry will automatically provide energy in critical moments. That's the general idea. Just follow my command. Volo grinned. Oh, quite the spirit. Now, go, Gible. Gible resembled a young shark, with a massive fin atop its head and two protrusions on the sides. Its body was deep blue, while its lower jaw and belly were red. It had a large mouth with sharp teeth, short and thick limbs with 3 toes each. Volo's Gible was male, and its dorsal fin had a notch. Hikaru noticed that the Gible seemed to be wearing some kind of spiral-shaped claw on its hand. Is that? Hikaru became alert. A razor claw? No, it looks different from what I've seen before. Yo! Hunch radiated ghostly energy. It was a sword, and the opponent was a dragon. If it won, wouldn't that make it the legendary dragon-slaying sword? Gible, use Twister. Volo issued the command first, and Gible, already faster than Hunch, had a battle-hungry glint in its eyes. The small shark spun rapidly, spewing dragon-type energy from its mouth, instantly forming a deep blue whirlwind. Twister wasn't a particularly strong move and was a special attack, meaning it wasn't much of a threat when used by Gible. However, it had a 20% chance to cause the opponent to flinch. And dodging wasn't an option. Hunch's ability was no guard. All attacks from both sides were guaranteed to hit. Shadow Sneak! Hikaru commanded. Hunch had been waiting for this moment. Yo! A shadow blade shot out from beneath Hunch, moving faster than Twister, forming a red-eyed spectral sword that slipped through the wind's shadows, striking Gible from behind. A move that strikes first. This was the advantage of priority moves. Gible, dodge! Volo smirked confidently. His Gible was fast. Fuka! Gible responded confidently to its trainer's expectations. However, in the next moment, the shadow attack curved unexpectedly, homing in on its target and hitting Gible directly. Oh! Volo's expression turned to surprise. He then noticed that although Hunch made slight evasive movements, it seemed more like it was delaying the impact of Twister while maneuvering strategically. I see, keeping distance to avoid flinching is a good idea. Volo's smile didn't fade, but now, he was intrigued by Hunch. That was Shadow Sneak, right? I know it's a priority move, but why did it still hit despite my Gible's speed? In real battles, outside of moves like lock-on, most attacks could be dodged if one's speed was fast enough. Even in games, messages like X dodged the attack in response to your shout were common. It's because of the ability No Guard. Hikaru didn't look at Volo but focused on the battlefield. Twister hit but no flinching. Pokémon with No Guard ensure that both their own and the opponent's attacks always hit. Hikaru narrowed his eyes, while Volo let out a sub-arashi eye in admiration. But right then, Hunch shuddered, trembling slightly. A rare ability. You've piqued my curiosity. But my Gible's ability is Rough Skin. If you hit me, you'll take damage too. Volo grinned. Hikaru internally noted that Rough Skin, being a hidden ability, couldn't appear on wild Pokémon in the games. Only Pokémon from the Dream World had it. To obtain a hidden ability, one needed an ability patch. However, in reality, hidden abilities were probably just rarer among the same species, as they could still be passed down through breeding. A bit troublesome. Hikaru thought. Volo chuckled. Let's continue. Now that I know your ability ensures hits, I can rest easy. Use Stomp. Gible leaped up and stomped down hard. Fuka! The ground erupted with rock fragments, sending shockwaves in all directions. Yo! Only now did Hunch understand why Hikaru had asked if it could use Protect earlier. Damn it! Should have learned a defensive move. Don't panic. Use substitute. Hikaru commanded, and Hunch quickly calmed itself. It sacrificed some HP to create a decoy, which took the full brunt of stomp. Since ground-type moves were super effective against steel types, the attack instantly shattered the substitute. Screech. Hunch scraped its blade against itself, emitting a piercing noise. Gibble clutched its ears in pain as its defense sharply fell. Gibble, use Sand Tomb. Volo's expression remained relaxed as he commanded a move not seen in the games. Gibble opened its mouth, spewing out a storm of sand. The swirling sands formed a vortex, enveloping Hunch, limiting its vision, and trapping it. Since all moves are guaranteed to hit due to no guard, blocking vision and trapping you means that even a guaranteed hit becomes meaningless. Volo grinned. Sand Tomb continuously drains your HP while keeping you trapped. And with rough skin, you won't dare to attack either. Furthermore, with Volo's laughter, Hikaru saw Hunch's eye flicker in pain. Being trapped in Sand Tomb and facing a ground-type attack was rough for a steel type. Meanwhile, Gibble raised the hooked claw on its hand, and the sandstorm grew stronger. Binding Claw. Volo raised a finger. This item extends the duration of binding and trapping moves. Your Pokémon is steel type, right? This isn't looking good. You're not the only one who came prepared. However, Hikaru remained calm and quickly strategized. That's not necessarily true. Hunch, screech. Hunch gathered its will and vibrated violently within the sandstorm. Even outside the sandstorm, Gibble clutched its ears in pain again. Its defense had now dropped by 4 stages. Lowering defense doesn't matter if you can't land a hit. Next turn will decide everything. Volo smirked, commanding. Gibble, use Dragon Breath. This move could cause paralysis. Clearly, Volo's strategy was to use Twister to flinch, Stomp to lower speed, and Sand Tomb to trap the opponent while finishing them off with Dragon Breath. A truly tormenting battle style fitting for Volo's cunning personality, Hikaru thought. But, as I said, that's not necessarily true. As Gibble gathered purple energy and fired Dragon Breath into the sandstorm, Hikaru commanded. Hunch, use substitute. Then charge forward. What? Volo was momentarily stunned, then saw the impossible unfold. Hunch created another substitute, reducing its HP further. The substitute took the full hit from Dragon Breath, disappearing, while Hunch itself broke free from Sand Tomb. It was now moving toward Gibble at high speed. Now, activate Citrus Berry. Then, use Psycho Cut. Volo quickly countered, use Dragon Breath. Hikaru knew that after using substitute again, Hunch's HP had dropped below 1/4. This was a critical moment. A glow emerged from Hunch's scabbard, energy surged through it. That was Citrus Berry. With its effect, Hunch's next move would gain priority 0.5. The blade glowed with a pink psychic aura. Psycho Cut. A critical hit. Gibble was sent flying, unable to unleash Dragon Breath. Since Psycho Cut was a non-contact move, Rough Skin didn't activate. Yo! Hunch kept its gaze locked on Gibble until the dragon collapsed. Then, it let out an excited sword cry. It was now a dragon-slaying sword. Congratulations! Hunch has learned a new move. New move, Night Slash. Chapter 22. Hikaru was momentarily stunned as thoughts flooded his mind. Gaining experience and effort values through battle, was this information also visible? Regardless, this was a good thing. Phew, I thought it was going to get back up and continue fighting. Hikaru sighed in relief. That Gibble was unbelievably tenacious. Even with its defense lowered by 4 stages and taking a critical hit from Psycho Cut, it still managed to stand up, albeit unsteadily. Luckily, it finally collapsed again, otherwise, it would have been ridiculous. However, in an informal battle, there were no move restrictions. If necessary, Hunch could still use rest to recover HP, though sleeping meant it would be vulnerable to attacks. Of course, mastering more moves meant having more choices during battles. Even in official battles with a 4-move limit, there was no such thing as move preparation. In other words, if a Pokémon had learned dozens of moves, the trainer still had options before revealing all 4 selected moves. They could adjust their strategy based on the situation, unlike in the games, where moves had to be preset before entering battle. At this moment, Volo was dumbfounded. He hadn't expected his Gibble to lose in such a manner. After recalling Gibble into its Pokeball, he stared at it for a long time before asking Hikaru. What happened? How did Sand Tomb fail to trap your Pokémon? And why did its attack speed suddenly increase afterward? My Gible should have been faster than your Pokémon. Even rough skin didn't take effect? This is unbelievable. Hunch floated up in celebration, marking the victory for itself and Hikaru. Hikaru reached out and high-fived its blue ribbon-like cloth, though it felt light as a feather before approaching Volo. Looks like I won. My luck wasn't bad. So, according to our agreement, next time I shop at your place, everything's 20% off. Wait. Volo had now taken a strong interest in Hikaru. What exactly happened just now? I never expected that outcome. Hikaru gave a concise explanation. Well, Shadow Sneak is a contact move, but Psycho Cut isn't. And while it looks like a special move, Psycho Cut is actually a physical attack. Also, Substitute can free a Pokémon from Sand Tomb. As for the increased attack speed, that was because of an item. The Lancet Berry it activates when a Pokémon is in a crisis, allowing it to move first if the priority of the move is the same. Hikaru pointed at himself. I'm a craftsman. Even though I haven't battled much myself, many people come to me for battle items. Each Pokémon has its own personality, stats, and strengths. Some items enhance their advantages, while others compensate for their weaknesses. In some cases, they can even turn a battle around. The key is to save your finishing move for the right moment. You have to create the conditions for victory. Revealing your trump card too early just gives the opponent an opening. In the Pokémon world, many trainers and even professors couldn't always distinguish between special and physical moves. This sometimes led to bizarre movesets. Understanding this distinction was just the first step in move research. However, experienced trainers naturally learned which moves worked best and what effects they had. It became a battle instinct. Volo fell into deep thought. Meanwhile, something occurred to Hikaru. Wait, this guy just battled me using Gible, yet he sold me a Draco Plate, which boosts Dragon-type moves, beforehand? Did he originally plan to use Tajipai instead? Or did he simply not care about winning this battle? Maybe he doesn't value items that boost move power that much? Haha. That was an amazing battle. At that moment, Grandpa Yameji appeared nearby, clapping enthusiastically. His Abra also looked delighted, as if it had enjoyed the fight. Even though you say you've never battled before, I could tell that you had already predicted certain developments while preparing. Truly impressive. Grandpa Yameji nodded approvingly. Without that item, the battle's outcome would have been uncertain. That last-second priority attack was incredible. You seized the opening in your opponent's defenses and landed a decisive strike. Your offensive awareness is excellent. Thank you for letting me witness such an exciting battle. Here, take this as a token of gratitude for delivering supplies to the mountain and giving me the chance to watch this match. Grandpa Yameji took out a dark jade bracelet with strange carvings. Hikaru instinctively wanted to refuse. It looked valuable, but the old man explained. Although it's made of jade, it's not some expensive gemstone. What matters is the stone component. So don't worry, just take it. This bracelet is an ancient trademark. Long ago, people used artifacts like this to teach Pokémon moves. Hikaru thanked him before accepting the bracelet, and immediately, an identification message appeared in his vision. Artifact, Ancient Bracelet Move Armlet. Description, an ancient tool once used for teaching Pokémon moves. The bracelet absorbs and stores a move, with the engraved runes detailing its effects and applications. A Pokémon that can learn the move will resonate with it and gain the ability to use it. Artifact Effect 1, teaches the move Reflect. Artifact Effect 2, can seal Reflect into the bracelet and be used to teach another Pokémon. Yo! At that moment, Hunch suddenly let out a noise, staring at the jade bracelet in surprise, shifting its blade side to side. It had seen this before. There was one in the royal palace. Hikaru, too, recalled similar items. Ancient bracelets were known valuable artifacts. They first appeared in the abyssal ruins of Pokémon Black and White, where they could be sold for 100,000 Poké each. In the Pokémon Special manga, there were ancient bracelets used to teach ultimate moves, similar in function to this one. That arc even mentioned how, before DMS existed, Pokémon learned new moves using these artifacts. During the Age of Kingdoms, it wouldn't be surprising if skilled craftsmen could forge such tools. Hikaru also remembered the ancient carving techniques he had recently obtained. It explicitly stated that mastering the craft could allow him to create ancient bracelets. Which meant, in the future, he could manufacture ancient versions of TMS. Though compared to Silphco's TMS, the ancient TMS seemed bulkier, and their learning efficiency was uncertain. Still, they might have a market. After all, some people preferred handcrafted, vintage artifacts. I didn't expect to lose this badly. Valo seemed to have finished contemplating. No one knew what he had been thinking about earlier, but now, he was back to his usual cheerful demeanor. So, as promised, next time you buy from me, everything will be 20% off. I'll have brand new stock ready for you, maybe I'll even come to you first. Rare people, rare events, rare items. A merchant must see them with their own eyes and experience them firsthand. The day's already late, rest at this hut for tonight. You can leave tomorrow. Hikaru knew he had piqued Valo's interest, but it didn't matter. Compared to villains who relied on high-tech methods to capture legendary Pokémon, Valo's method was downright primitive: find them and challenge them to battle. That was relatively harmless. If you visit my place next time, bring me some rare materials, will you? Hikaru held the move armlet, asking Grandpa Yamaji how to use it, while Valo stood in the open area. Even after Hikaru entered the nearby hut, Valo turned to glance at the ruins. I finally met someone interesting. Selling him the plate was the right choice. But I know I've seen him before. Why can't I remember? For some reason, I have a feeling. Was this encounter Arceus guidance? Inside the mountain hut, Doduo had been brought in, letting out a contented noise as it fluffed its feathers and curled up to rest. Dodo. Hikaru stroked Doduo's soft, warm feathers, feeling himself relax. Doduo's plumage was so soft and warm. Man, that was exhausting. Real-world Pokémon battles were nothing like in the games. Moves had similarities, but in real-time battles, the opponent wouldn't just stand there waiting for you to act. Without the turn-based system, certain annoying strategies lost their effectiveness. Of course, losing some tactics meant gaining new ones. Unexpected move combinations emerged, keeping trainers on high alert. Come to think of it, I didn't have to win. Valo only asked for a battle. Losing wouldn't have mattered, right? Hikaru muttered while stroking Doduo's feathers. However, Hunj immediately objected. Yo! What nonsense! A battle must be won. We are a knight and a king, the strongest team. Well, still. I'm not a registered league trainer. Hikaru scratched his head. Like Mr. Iron, many craftsmen didn't own Pokémon, they relied solely on their craftsmanship to make a living. The original owner of his body was the same. Without a Pokémon, one wasn't considered a trainer. Not registering with the league wasn't a big deal at most, it just meant no free meals at Pokémon centers. Of course, battles were the heart of this world. Every region had Pokémon trainer schools to train future trainers. The academy trained trainers. But the ones who shone the most in tournaments were still the wild trained trainers like Ash Ketchum. Textbooks had their limits. Some things could only be learned through real battles. A trainer could master game battles, but in real-time combat, they might get overwhelmed and lose to someone who had more hands-on experience. Yo! Hunch squinted its single eye, letting out eerie noises. Stop lying to yourself. That battle just now proved it. You have the desire to win deep in your blood. Hikaru. Fine, next time, let's practice sacred sword cancelling. Chapter 23. Faced with Hikaru's ambiguous skill, Hunch didn't quite understand, but it felt like it must be an impressive technique. Slashes, cancelling? It fell into deep thought, seemingly constructing a swordsmanship model in its mind. At this moment, Hikaru also raised his right hand, the ancient symbols on the ancient bracelet remaining silent. By merely making contact with the ancient bracelet, a Pokémon could naturally comprehend its power. This mechanism differed slightly from the Zering and was more akin to the Scroll of Darkness and Scroll of Waters, which the Pokémon Cubfu could evolve after sufficient training by simply observing these scrolls and mastering the corresponding signature move. Of course, learning moves didn't always require a trademark. Observing and mimicking the techniques of other Pokémon was also a valid way to acquire new moves. For example, Ash's Pikachu frequently used Iron Tail, which was actually taught to him by a furret belonging to a passing trainer. While contemplating this, Hikaru removed the ancient bracelet from his wrist and handed it to Hunch. Seeing the bracelet being offered, Hunch floated forward, using its blue ribbon-like limb to take it. Back on the mountain, it had already heard that this bracelet contained move data. But, what exactly was reflect? Hikaru suddenly teased it. Reflect is a psychic-type defensive move that creates a mysterious wall. While the wall is up, the damage from physical moves is halved. This is a defensive move, yet you said before that you dislike defensive techniques. What now? How did it feel using substitute? However, Hunt showed no sign of embarrassment. It narrowed its single eye slightly and emitted a sound that essentially meant, that was then, this is now. Yo! What did the me from a few days ago have to do with the me from tonight? Substitute? Substitute was incredibly useful. And citrus berry as well. Imagine constructing a transparent wall in your mind, not just in your mind, but within your soul. Call upon your mental power. This shouldn't be difficult for you. Just like when you use Psycho Cut. Psychic type energy, hey? Hunt continuously played with the ancient bracelet while simultaneously sensing the elemental energy stored within it. Gradually, in its vision, a radiant transparent wall shimmered into existence. It was a recorded visualization from the ancient bracelet. Yo! Hunt floated into the air, faint psychic energy slowly emanating from its blade. Before long, an irregularly shaped transparent wall began to take form in front of it. At that moment, Hikaru also noticed the symbols on the ancient bracelet beginning to glow faintly. The move was being observed, mimicked, and learned. Recording moves, allowing Pokémon to observe, guiding them, and finally leading to mastery. Modern TMS have likely streamlined these steps. The learning process was going even more smoothly than Hikaru had anticipated. Perhaps it was because Hunt had already learned Psycho Cut, a move that also harnessed psychic energy, before attempting to learn Reflect. In battle simulations, Reflect and Light Screen simply reduce the damage from special and physical attacks. But in real battles, the walls are physically present. If someone uses a contact-based move recklessly, they'll hit the wall and face severe hindrance. Hikaru recalled what he had seen before. In the anime, when Ash's Trico battled at the Lava Ridge Gym, it had crashed head-on into a Reflect wall and was sent flying. Moreover, these barriers could move with the Pokémon that cast them. In Pokémon Adventures, Light Screen was even used to create an invisible cage to trap an opponent. Yo! Hunt let out a cry as the barrier in front of it took on a perfectly rectangular form, shimmering brightly. It had successfully learned Reflect. It worked. Hikaru was becoming more intrigued by the bracelet. Try using Reflect again. Hunt's eye focused on the bracelet, understanding Hikaru's intention. It then activated Reflect directly in front of the bracelet. A faintly glowing transparent wall materialized, and instantly, the inscriptions on the bracelet shone brightly. As the psychic energy forming the barrier began to distort and fade like mist, its energy was reabsorbed into the bracelet. So that's how it works. I completely understand now. Hikaru grasped the mechanism of the bracelet. It fundamentally functioned by absorbing corresponding elemental energy. When the stored move was executed, it resonated with the inscriptions on the bracelet, allowing moves to be repeatedly recorded and stored. It was similar to hum techniques. In many regions, there existed a category of moves known as hidden moves, HMS. These moves, once learned by a Pokémon, were difficult to forget. However, starting from the Alola region, HMS gradually fell out of use. Originally, they had been developed to help humans utilize Pokémon's abilities more effectively. The 6 most common hum moves were Cut, Rock Smash, Strength, Surf, Waterfall, Fly. Now, as long as I find the right craftsmanship, I should be able to create an ancient move bracelet, essentially an ancient bracelet. But where could he find the necessary techniques? What materials would be required? Unlike the ancient statues that were directly carved, these ancient bracelets seemed to incorporate a mysterious psychic energy. This reminded Hikaru of a precious Kalos region artifact, the Punishment Urn. Some objects required Pokémon's elemental energy to be imbued during their creation. Hikaru opened his computer, which, surprisingly, was connected to the internet. Let's look up some renowned artisans. Unlike Pokémon trainers, who often documented their training techniques and shared them with others, artisans guarded their skills closely. Finding their trade secrets online was impossible. Hikaru instead searched for famous craftsmen from various regions. Johto region, no need to say much. Kurt is the most well-known Pokeball craftsman. Mahogany Town, Wilbur is a master ice sculptor. Kianwood City, the ancient pharmacy holds secret recipes and techniques for medicinal herbs, while the charcoal from Ilex Forest is one of Johto's specialties. Hone region, the glass workshop at the base of MT Chimney is famous, crafting unique glass whistles from volcanic ash. By the sea, an old man specializes in making shell bells. Sinnoh region, the elder of Celestic Town Cynthia's grandmother has the skill to craft ancient charms. In addition, some crafting techniques from the Hisui era have been preserved. Unova region, Twist Mountain has artisans who fire ceramics using volcanic clay and possess ancient metalworking techniques. Paldea region, Kasgarafa is known for its ceramic craftsmanship. Paldea also has artisans skilled in forging mystical armor. Galar region, Galar's silk and textile industry is renowned, with Wooloo's wool being a top-tier material. Almia region, a highly skilled woodcarver resides there. Paldea region, again master sculptor Koja is renowned. Perhaps studying the techniques of these artisans could improve my craftsmanship. Hikaru pondered carefully. Once autumn arrived in Sinnoh, he could leave. By then, the ruins would be buried under heavy snow, and he could embark on a journey to study different crafts. Seeing these artisans work firsthand might provide new insights or even lead to rare material discoveries. Observe. Imitate. Recreate. Surpass. The next day. At dawn, Hikaru bid farewell to Yamaji and Valo, who mentioned that he too would be traveling in search of rare materials. If I find something good, I'll give you a discount. With that, he left. Hikaru returned to the village by afternoon, returned the dodo to the villagers, then took hunchback to his workshop. He glanced at the fields surrounding the workshop but didn't see Petalil. However, near the medicinal garden, there was a small pit in the soil. Had she been here and left? I hope she's taking care of herself. Setting down his backpack, he didn't immediately remove his work attire. Instead, he swapped out his boots for regular shoes and began sorting through his materials and tools. Finally back. This trip was well worth it. Among the materials he retrieved were beech radish, hardstone, royal leaf, silencer spray, ancient bracelet, leaf stone, and dragon plate. As he placed everything away, a sudden, loud whooshing sound echoed from the sky. Hey? What's that sound? Stepping outside, he saw a massive black silhouette soaring through the sunlit sky. Roar! Hikaru's eyes widened. It was a Charizard. Charizard was a bipedal Pokémon with the classic features of a dragon, though it lacked the dragon typing. Its body was primarily orange, with a cream-colored belly extending to the tip of its tail. It had short but sturdy hind legs, relatively smaller forelimbs, and massive wings that allowed it to fly. With a long neck, blue eyes, and two horn-like structures protruding from the back of its head, Charizard's most distinctive feature was the flame at the tip of its thick tail burning intensely, a symbol of its vitality. With the roar of the wind, the massive Charizard descended, landing with a powerful gust. It was noticeably larger than most Charizards, and hanging from its chest was a delivery crate. The moment it touched the ground, Charizard locked eyes with Hikaru, seemingly comparing him to a reference image. At the same time, Hikaru noticed a small, watch-like device strapped to its wrist, likely a specialized tracking tool for locating the recipient. Wait, is this a delivery service? This Charizard had come from Blackthorn City. Realizing this, Hikaru hurried back inside to pack the shipment. The goods he was sending included Eviolite stones and focus sashes. Additionally, he had to ship a cleanse tag, which required rerouting. From Blackthorn City, the shipment would be transferred to Olivine City, then transported overseas by ship to Unova. Johto had a notable population of Charizard, especially in Cherrycific Valley, where many wild Charizard resided. In other regions, Charizard was frequently used as a ride Pokémon or for long-distance deliveries. With proper training, a Charizard's endurance for extended flights was impressive. Once Charizard confirmed Hikaru's identity as the sender, it became visibly curious, looking around at its surroundings. It seemed unfamiliar with this area, finding everything fascinating. However, it did not forget its mission. With a clawed hand, it gestured at the empty crate, signaling Hikaru to place the package inside. Much appreciated. With that, the shipment was successfully prepared. Chapter 24. Let's reach 15 reviews for an extra chapter. Hikaru placed the prepared package into the delivery box while Charizard held a few cards, seemingly cross-checking the shipment details. Hikaru offered Charizard a berry, but the latter waved its claws and let out a deep growl. Roar! Charizard gestured with its claws, acting as if it didn't recognize Hikaru, but that wasn't actually its intent. Yohunch floated over just in time to translate. Charizard explained that it couldn't eat food given by others during work hours. If it got sick, it could delay deliveries, or worse, lead to lost packages. Moreover, it had already eaten its work meal before setting out and carried emergency Pokémon food in its storage box. While letting out a low growl, Charizard reached into its box and pulled out something that looked like a steamed bun. It was an anger bun, a specialty from Qianwood Town and a well-known snack throughout Johto. Even Charizard, flying in from Blackthorn City, carried some in case it encountered unexpected situations or status conditions along the way. Makes sense. It's true that one shouldn't eat food from just anyone, Hikaru murmured, momentarily dazed as he realized that Pokémon with actual jobs were quite different from wild Pokémon. Their awareness of food safety was truly impressive. I was just a customer. I overstepped. Roar. With that, Charizard flapped its wings, not lingering for further conversation. Dedicated to its job, it soared into the sky with the package, gradually becoming a speck in the distance. As the wind stirred the grass, something seemed to fall from the sky, landing on Hikaru's head. It was a strikingly white leaf. Hey! Hikaru reached up and plucked the leaf from his hair. Rare material, white herb. Description: a white herb leaf that retains a pleasant fragrance. This herb can occasionally be found in grassy fields, forests, or carried by flying-type Pokémon from faraway places. Effect: when held by a Pokémon, it restores lowered stats once. Knowledge acquired, +1. Leaf Wanderer, occasionally finds herb leaves from wind-swept foliage with a 5% chance. White herbs could indeed be found in nature, but their specific growing locations were unpredictable. Finding a full herb plant was pure luck. However, flower shops in different regions often cultivated them, much like Grassidia flowers. Pokémon commonly associated with herbs were tang growth, as people often discovered herbs entangled in its vines. The vines themselves also had properties similar to certain herbs, though the connection seemed purely coincidental. Beep beep. The computer chimed. Another wild customer request had appeared. The drop rate really was high. With that thought, Hikaru returned to his house. Opening his inbox, he found a message with an intriguing subject line. I have foreseen that you possess light clay. To be honest, I've heard that this clay can enhance psychic-type moves, but it is rare and mostly found underground in Sinnoh. It cannot be obtained in Kanto or Johto. If you have any, I would like to buy it. Foreseen? A psychic? The sender's ID is Zaitu. This ID was completely unfamiliar. There was nothing to glean from it, but since they were a potential customer, especially one who had foreseen his possession of light clay, it was an opportunity to sell. Initially, Hikaru had planned to fire the light clay into ceramics, but he hadn't had the time. Now, someone was offering to buy it directly. Beep beep. A second email arrived. I have foreseen that you were planning to fire the light clay into a unique ceramic. I am also very interested in this ceramic. Please make it, and I will pay double. Hey! Hikaru was taken aback. This person was impressive. Weren't psychics usually limited to reading minds or foreseeing events only when close by? To prevent another unexpected email, Hikaru quickly added the sender as a contact and initiated a conversation. You should already know what light clay does, right? When a Pokémon holding it uses light screen or reflect, the effects last longer. The price for light clay is 50,000 Poke dollars. If you want me to fire it into ceramics, the price will naturally go up, probably around 100,000. With your offer to pay double, that would be 200,000. Are you sure you still want it? Hikaru initially considered charging only 20,000 but realized that light clay was rare in this region. That price would be too low. Zaitu. No problem. Money is of no importance to us psychics. Besides, I am also a world-traveling magician and quite well known in the magic community. You need not worry about my funds. And to answer your earlier question, why can a psychic read minds from such a distance? I didn't read your mind. I merely foresaw the future and knew exactly what you would say at this moment. I also rely on my Pokémon's power. My partner is Zaitu. My Zaitu uses future sight to locate rare and mysterious items. Everything it finds possesses extraordinary abilities. A future sight user? In Pokémon battles, future sight was a delayed damage move. But outside of battle, the ability truly allowed glimpses into the future. By predicting the near future with precision, one could act accordingly. That was the essence of future sight. Zaitu, in particular, could peer into both a person's future and past. Zaitu. You seem quite interested in psychic abilities. The message was accompanied by a curious emoji, followed by another intriguing note. If you want to know whether you have latent psychic abilities, or if you're interested in training them to pursue greater power, I can offer some advice. Here's a simple training method. Nighttime is the best period to enhance psychic abilities. Focus all your attention on a single tree in front of you, concentrating fully on it. This will strengthen your focus, improving your battle awareness. Even if you don't awaken psychic powers, your mental fortitude will grow. Of course, I have other training methods, but those are secrets. If people knew my training techniques, they would understand my strengths. At first, conversing with a psychic felt fascinating. Now, it was a bit unsettling. No matter what Hikaru did or said, his future would be foreseen. Could you stop predicting my future? Hikaru sighed. As a craftsman, I don't want my work process to be laid bare to others. Zaitu. Apologies, I forgot about that. Please proceed with the ceramic firing. Once you're done, just message me, I'll always be available. After that, the psychic remained silent. Hikaru immediately retrieved the stored light clay. Indeed, it was rare in Johto, with most of it originating in Sinnoh. The forge's doors swung open, the cleared furnace reignited, and the external ventilation was adjusted. There was no anvil. Hikaru would need to get one. More forging and pottery tools would also be necessary. Maybe he could place an online order and have Blackthorn City's delivery service handle it. The village might also have some spare anvil and tools. A traditional ceramic firing method called Nanbanyaki used charcoal furnaces, similar in size to small coal stoves. In primitive settings where high-quality kilns weren't available, pottery was fired using simple fuel piles directly on the ground. However, this method often resulted in lower quality finishes. Fortunately, Hikaru had a proper forge. He quickly completed the raw material processing, clay shaping, and glazing stages, employing unique ceramic crafting techniques. The glazing step, in particular, was troublesome. Once everything was set, it was time to fire the clay. The process took hours. Hunch peeked in at one point but quickly retreated after feeling the heat. Steel types were weak to fire. You definitely can't do this job, or it'd turn into a sword forging contest, Hikaru chuckled. Soon, the firing was complete. Crafted item, light ceramic, vessel. Description, a ceramic vessel fired from rare light clay, using a unique technique. Effects, Pokémon holding it extend the duration of light screen and reflect. Rock and ground type Pokémon especially love this ceramic, as light clay slightly enhances their energy. Unique effect, psychic type Pokémon that stay near the light ceramic for long periods will see their psychic moves strengthened. Zaitu. I'm currently training in Kian Wood. Since I can foresee you, it means my psychic power can also reach you through the internet. I'll have Zaitu use teleport to pick up the item. Your craftsmanship will be put to great use. What does put to great use mean? It means I will challenge strong Pokémon trainers. Apologies, this is my final future sight. Allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Itsuki, a former traveling magician and a member of Johto's Elite Four. It's a pleasure to meet you. For the ones that don't know, Itsuki is Will. With the transaction notification, Hikaru saw 200,000 Poke dollars credited to his account. Whoosh! A strange psychic ripple spread, and Hikaru turned in time to see the ceramic vessel shatter before vanishing in an instant. Teleporting to pick up goods from this far away? This psychic power is... Hikaru was stunned. Wait, doesn't this mean the truly impressive one is Zaitu? Psychic types really are convenient. Maybe I should make an ocarina next. Chapter 25. 4/15 reviews for the extra chapter. June 14th. Weather, overcast, light rain. After several days of sunny and cloudy weather, the rain finally arrived today. The rainfall was just right, no need to water the crops today. Recently, many goods had been sold, making funds plentiful. Yesterday afternoon, Hikaru went into the village and brought back an anvil for the forge. At the same time, he ordered a batch of combi honey online. This was an essential ingredient for crafting rare candies, though the most important component, mickle berries, was still unavailable. The honey was merely an early preparation. Hikaru was in a good mood as he stepped outside, umbrella in hand, and headed toward the herb and crop fields. Near the edge of the field, close to the herbs, familiar leaves appeared once again. However, this time, the leaves were damaged, with two of them even broken. Petalil had buried herself in the soil but had not entered the fields. She only stayed near the edge, seemingly believing that by doing so, she wouldn't be driven away. Beside her, there was a white berry. It's obvious you lost again. This time, she had been beaten even worse than before. Hikaru walked over and gently pulled at her, causing Petalil to let out a soft lily of displeasure. But upon realizing that it was the house's owner, she struggled to lift her head from the soil. As expected, the wounds he had previously treated had not only reopened but worsened. Such severe injuries were rare in the Pokémon world. Some of her wounds seemed different from the rest, likely inflicted by bug-type Pokémon while she was weakened. Lily. Petalil glanced at Hikaru, then at the nearby revival herb, before pushing the white berry toward him. It's not ready yet. It's only been 2 or 3 days, Hikaru replied helplessly. Petalil nodded slightly and stopped moving. She didn't even have the strength to hop around anymore. Hikaru picked up the white berry. Rare material, white apricorn. Description: a white apricorn with no fragrance. These only appear in fertile soil. Knowledge acquired, +1. Flourishing land, crops, herbs, and trees you plant will increase vitality in the surrounding area, allowing the soil to recover faster. Did you lose your habitat? Hikaru asked. I've heard that forest battles are intense. But you didn't come from deep within Ilex Forest, did you? Petalil slightly lifted her head. Lily. At that moment, Hunch floated out. As Hikaru's loyal translator, it conveyed Petalil's words. She lived on the outskirts of the forest, not deep within. She was merely using the soil here to recover and would leave soon, ensuring no harm came to the herb field. Lily. If necessary, she was willing to exchange her leaves for potions and herbs. But, how did Hikaru know she had lost her home? I know a bit about your kind, Hikaru said. You're a communal Pokémon species, often led by a Tsarina. Hearing the translation, Hikaru felt slightly awkward, as if he were some villain exposing a secret. Petalil's personality was certainly unique. She didn't want to trouble others and insisted on trading her leaves for medicine. Stubborn nature, truly fascinating. Lily. Petalil weakly responded. Hunch translated. She abandoned her leader. Hikaru frowned in confusion. You weren't abandoned by your Tsarina, you abandoned her. Petalil soon confirmed his question. During the conversation, Hikaru took out some medicine, berries, and a revive. After eating and applying the medicine, Petalil's condition improved. She explained that neither her leader nor her companions were willing to fight for their home. So, she left them and tried to reclaim it on her own. In the wild, weaker Pokémon would always lose their homes to stronger ones. But if she became strong enough, she could take it back herself. Many grass-type Pokémon avoided conflict, but some had distinct personalities and traits. Among them were the rebels of their kind. For some reason, Hikaru thought of Ash's Septal. Back when it was still a Trico, it had been a rebellious member of its group. For Pokémon, the path to strength was simple: battle, gain experience, evolve, or learn new moves. However, Petalil's evolution wasn't tied to battle experience alone. She needed a sunstone to evolve. Battle, lose, get injured, heal, and fight again. Has the likelihood of victory increased? How many battles have you fought since losing your home? Petalil wasn't sure anymore, at least a dozen. This meant that even before Hikaru moved here, she had been battling other Pokémon. She had likely been fighting since winter and the harsh spring season. Losing a home in winter or spring, because warm, nutrient-rich soil is ideal for living. The Pokémon that took your home, were they grass types too? But they must have had another secondary type. Do you need help? Petalil stared at Hikaru for a long time. She didn't shake her head or nod. Instead, she let out a loud cry. Lily. Her voice was no longer soft but filled with frustration and anger. If she reclaimed her home with someone else's help, her former companions wouldn't reflect on their cowardice. They would just say that she had relied on outside aid. And once that aid disappeared, their home would be taken again, returning to square one. So, she had to do it herself. She had to evolve. She didn't need temporary help, she needed true strength. She was willing to pay any price for it. Though she only had the leaves on her head to trade, she offered them all. Hikaru was touched. Most weak Pokémon either sought a trainer or coexisted with stronger Pokémon for security. Trainers helped them grow, and stronger Pokémon offered mutual benefits. But this Petalil rejected external support, believing even a trainer was an unreliable factor. Hikaru's thoughts were complicated, but Hunch was deeply moved. It floated over and tried to comfort Petalil with its blue ribbon. Yo! Long ago, I saw knights with your spirit. Sharpening your strength and overcoming powerful foes is the path to self-improvement. I support you. Hunch enthusiastically declared that it wanted to train Petalil. Yo! I was once a knight's sword. And I even have dragon-slaying achievements. Back in ancient times, I would have been recorded in history and sung about. Hikaru bluntly shattered its delusions. That was just a gibble, not a gar comp. Even if you claim to be a dragon slayer, defeating a baby dragon doesn't prove much, does it? Hunch retorted, a baby dragon is still a dragon. And I was just a baby sword. It patted its sheath and made a bold promise to Petalil. Yo! Slash! I am strong. This person is strong. With our training and tools, you'll be unstoppable. Hikaru smiled. If you want to become stronger, come work with me. Training while working will help you grow. Don't worry, weak Pokémon can become strong. All it takes is clever move combinations and an unbreakable will. Then it's settled. Hikaru took out a Pokeball. A trainer in Johto once said strong Pokémon. Weak Pokémon. Those are just the selfish perceptions of people. You will become strong. Petalil stared at the Pokeball. Without hesitation, she tapped it. The red light engulfed her. The Pokeball barely shook before clicking shut. I caught a Petalil. Chapter 26. A new companion had joined the workshop. However, when Hikaru released Petalil again and assigned her a task, she seemed confused. She tilted her head and made a questioning sound. Lily. Work? Does that mean constant battling? Petalil didn't understand what work meant, but Hikaru explained that he wanted her to help the herbs grow. In return, he would provide her with useful medicinal plants. It's just like how you trade your leaves for medicine, putting in effort to receive something in return. The main thing you spend is time. Your work is to help me manage the herbs and crops, assisting them in growing. Helping me with work is different from helping others. I am an artisan who specializes in crafting items with special powers and collecting rare materials. Through this process, both of us will gradually grow stronger and improve. Lily. Petalil still had many doubts, but the mention of herbs caught her interest. When she shifted her gaze toward them, Hikaru nodded. Yes, revival herbs can be part of your reward. So, you need to help them grow quickly. I was worried about Oddish coming here because they tend to scatter seeds everywhere. They don't mean any harm, but their presence negatively affects the growth of herbs. Every Pokémon species has different attributes, and even Pokémon of the same type have unique ecological traits, natural behaviors, and varying effects on their surroundings. Hikaru explained that he hadn't driven her away from the herb garden out of dislike. Hunch chimed in, mentioning that Hikaru had once spoken about a powerful grass-type Pokémon from a distant land. Unlike other grass types, its presence caused forests to wither and lands to decay. Yo! Of course, such a Pokémon wouldn't appear here. But since each grass type had different habits and abilities, their effects on farmland varied. Petalil was immediately fascinated. Lily. A grass-type Pokémon that destroys forests and soil? If you think about it, Pokémon are truly mysterious, even you don't fully understand your own kind. For us humans, the key is learning how to coexist with Pokémon while maintaining balance. Hikaru smiled as Petalil pondered this before finally agreeing to his request. This wasn't a capture, it was merely cooperation, just like when Hikaru asked Dugtrio and Diglett to help till the fields. Guided by Hikaru and Hunch, Petalil strolled through the herb and crop fields. Hikaru introduced the different planting areas, estimated growth speeds, and various farming techniques, including methods for cultivating berries. Petalil listened with widening eyes, overwhelmed by all the information. She was a grass-type Pokémon, yet she didn't understand any of this. Human knowledge is amazing. Pokémon rely on their attributes and instincts to survive. Grass types live in forests, ground types in deserts, rock types in caves, water types near lakes. But humans are different. We must acquire knowledge and use resources wisely to thrive in all environments. After the tour, Hikaru wanted to assess her moveset and learn about the Pokémon she had been fighting. Knowing your enemy's type, ability, and moves lets you strategize and increase your chances of winning. Petalil, initially stubborn, now seemed less confident. Hikaru's knowledge was overwhelming, leaving her unsure of herself. However, Hunch's encouragement reassured her. Lily Lily Waa. Yo yo. Petalil described her enemies, and Hunch translated. They were round Pokémon that looked like wooden balls, 6 in total. One was noticeably larger with a fierce gaze. The smaller ones had brown lower halves and red upper halves, with somewhat goofy expressions. The largest one had the colors reversed, red on the bottom and brown on the top. These Pokémon arrived at Petalil's home at the end of spring. Though few in number, they scattered electrically charged seeds everywhere and even exploded. Hisuian Voltorb and Hisuian Electrode. Hikaru's expression changed. The color scheme wasn't that of normal Voltorb and Electrode, it was the Hisuian form. According to records, Hisuian Voltorb and Electrode had bodies composed of apricorn-like material. Their typing was electric/grass, and they had the abilities soundproof, static, and aftermath. However, Hisuian Voltorb were supposed to be cheerful and friendly, often gathering in groups to laugh together, quite the opposite of their perpetually angry Cantonian counterparts. A battle for territory, with Pokémon whose bodies resemble apricorns, and a form that had supposedly disappeared for over 100 years? Wait, does this mean Petalil's original habitat was full of apricorn trees? Apricorns thrived in fertile soil. If Petalil's territory overlapped with an apricorn grove, then this struggle made sense. However, since Hisuian Voltorb were thought to be extinct and Petalil were extremely rare in Sinnoh, this conflict was incredibly unlikely, a territorial battle between grass types for soil and apricorn land. Hikaru was intrigued. If that area really has apricorn trees. Apricorns were crucial for crafting Pokeballs and sticky globs. I see. Sinnoh's climate has changed, leading to the decline of Hisuian Pokémon. However, this forgotten ancient land in Johto retains a similar environment, allowing Hisuian Pokémon to persist. Perhaps some Pokémon were brought here by ancient Sinnohan settlers and have since taken root. One of the Hisuian Voltorb must have evolved into a Hisuian Electrode and decided to claim Petalil's territory to expand its species. No wonder Petalil always returned battered, she had been fighting walking explosives the entire time. In any case, by working with me, you'll become stronger. But first, show me what moves you've learned. Hunch volunteered for a sparring session, giving Petalil a chance to demonstrate her abilities. During the fight, Hikaru took out a notebook and began recording her techniques. First were the powder-based moves Stun Spore and Sleep Powder, followed by Leech Seed. However, due to the rain, the powder became sticky and ineffective against Hunch. Hikaru then saw her use Protect, a faint green barrier blocked one of Hunch's casual attacks. However, by the second round, she struggled to defend properly. She attempted Magical Leaf and Giga Drain, but when Hunch finally overpowered her, she used a rather peculiar move. There was nothing in front of her, yet it seemed as though an air punch had been thrown. Faint energy rippled forward, directly striking Hunch. However, it had no effect. Ghost types are immune. Vacuum Wave? No. Petalil can't learn that move. A normal type attack with no special effects, could it be Endure? That seemed plausible. Petalil could indeed learn Endure. Considering how she had repeatedly endured her way back to her home, it made sense for her to have this move. Normal type moves couldn't affect ghost types, but physical force still existed. Hunch had a tangible body, after all. Still, the impact was weak, barely stronger than Tackle. Hunch only paused momentarily before resuming its assault. Did she learn this move in her battles for her home? Would her next move be Yo? Hunch used Psycho Cut, but Petalil didn't fall. Instead, a focus-building effect activated before the attack landed. As I thought, Endure. She had Protect, Endure, and Flail. Petalil was way too determined. Protect blocked one explosion. Endure withstood another. That still left 2 more self-destructing bombs. Finally, she used Synthesis, but since it was raining, she barely recovered any HP. Soon, Hunch defeated her. Moveset: Stun Spore, Sleep Powder, Leech Seed, Magical Leaf, Giga Drain, Flail, Protect, Endure. Ability: Own Tempo. Hikaru noted down his findings. Petalil, a Pokémon from Ilex Forest. Slightly stubborn personality. Met in the herb garden outside the workshop. Dislikes bitter flavors. Unyielding spirit. Chapter 27. The Pokémon Hikaru had encountered so far all had difficult personalities and less than ideal abilities. Hunch's lax nature wasn't great. It had only one ability, so there was no choice there. Petalil was the same. Her stubborn nature would be excellent if she could evolve into Hisuian Lilligant, but that wasn't possible yet. Her ability, own tempo, was far inferior to chlorophyll. Hikaru had not cultivated mints that could alter a Pokémon's nature. Mints were rare plants, unavailable in Kanto and Johto. Even department stores in major cities might not stock them. Battle Frontier had them as exchange rewards, but the cost efficiency was too low for him. Besides, he wasn't strong enough to challenge the frontier just yet. He vaguely recalled that Petalil could learn Sunny Day and Encore, as well as Helping Hand and Pollen Puff. In Generation vs Unova, she could even learn Toxic. Toxic and Pollen Puff were useful against grass-type opponents. If she could evolve into Hisuian Lilligant, things would be easier. Victory Dance, Triple Axle, Swords Dance, Close Combat, and Weather Ball under Sunny Day could even become a fire-type move. She needs a Sunstone, and evolution must take place in a Hisuian environment. Ancient texts mention that Hisui's lands share similarities with Johto's. That may explain why Hisuian Pokémon have appeared in this untouched forest. After finishing his observations of Petalil, who had fallen into a deep sleep from exhaustion, Hikaru prepared Pokémon food for her and shifted his focus to carving the ancient ruin tablets. With Petalil assisting in plant growth, he no longer had to worry much about farming. A ruin stone was placed on the workbench, and Hikaru's mind was gradually filled with knowledge of the ancient engraving techniques used to carve such relics. The ruin stones bore the marks of time, holding the essence of ancient history and an air of mystery. Following the guidance of his craftsmanship skills and the engraving style of Johto's ruins, Hikaru began cutting and processing 3 stone slabs. Hunch floated over curiously, and Petalil hopped onto the workbench, fascinated by the weathered stones. "You want to help too? Perfect. Show Petalil what you're capable of." Hikaru grinned, grabbing a regular stone and sketching a tic-tac-toe grid on it with chalk. "Go ahead, try cutting it however you like. But first, practice on this ordinary stone." Hunch touched its hilt with its blue ribbon, focusing intently. "Yo! I have to show our new companion just how impressive we are." Invisible psychic threads emerged under Hunch's concentrated gaze, aligning perfectly with the chalk lines. For a brief moment, Hunch felt the same sensation as when using Psycho Cut. The psychic threads overlapped with the markings, and Hunch drew its blade. Psycho Cut. A blade formed from pure mental energy, capable of slicing through any opponent. This time, however, Hunch didn't release the energy outward. Instead, it maintained its Psycho Cut in a controlled state, carefully carving the stone. The sword's tip glided precisely along the chalk lines, performing clean cuts that left Hikaru genuinely impressed. Amazing precision. The cuts were nearly flawless, following the chalk guidelines without deviation. The stones scattered neatly, forming a pile of perfectly cubed fragments. The energy of Psycho Cut had even penetrated the stone's core, cleanly separating the rock and leaving smooth surfaces. In a way, isn't this just like Rock Smash? No, this was much better. This technique eliminated the need for cutting machines to process large stones. "Well done, Hunch." "Yo." Hunch relaxed, though it had no mouth to show it. Concentrating so hard on cutting the stone had left it feeling a little anxious, but Hikaru's encouragement quickly put it at ease. "This is how it always is at first. With more practice, you'll get used to it. Mastery comes with experience." Hikaru reassured Hunch, who soon let go of its anxiety and set its sights on the 4 remaining ruin stones. Meanwhile, Petalil watched in excitement, her 3 leaves trembling with anticipation. "Wah!" Her voice made it clear how amazed she was. Hunch's demonstration had shown Petalil a glimpse of true strength. "Lily wah!" Petalil eagerly asked Hunch how it achieved such precise cutting. Hunch, eyes shut smugly, exuded an "Aren't I incredible?" aura. "Yo! Yo yo pu! Because I worked with Hikaru and mastered a new move, Psycho Cut. That's how I can cut so precisely. If you work hard too, you'll definitely learn stronger moves." Lily. Petalil twirled her leaf-like skirt in motivation. "Yes. I will get stronger soon." While the 2 Pokémon exchanged thoughts, Hikaru was already fully engrossed in his work. Among the 5 ruin stones, he selected 3 and began engraving unique patterns onto them. Gradually, his craftsmanship knowledge guided him toward the symbolic tablets. Hikaru paused for a moment, his expression shifting slightly. The carvings were related to Unown. But that was expected. I should have known Unown are classified as the symbol Pokémon, and the ancient tablets found in ruins were often inscribed with Unown-like symbols. The so-called symbolic tablets are small engraved stones that form ancient words when pieced together. The carving process took a long time. To Hikaru's surprise, because he was using the Johto ruins engraving style, the technique slightly boosted both human and Pokémon mental stamina, reducing accumulated fatigue. Though he had been intensely focused, he felt increasingly refreshed instead of tired. His mental and physical fatigue gradually faded. Hikaru lost track of time. The 3 ruin stones weren't particularly large, but engraving unknown symbols and their intricate surrounding patterns took significant effort. They resemble the ruins of Alph tablets. Is this an influence from Johto's ancient civilizations? Before he knew it, 5 hours had passed. He ate some instant food before resuming work. Hunch and Petalil watched intently, their focus sharpening as well. Done. Symbolic tablets begin cutting. Zzz. Upon Hikaru's command, Hunch stopped conversing and activated Psycho Cut once more. Its precision was at its peak. In craftsmanship, elegance was unnecessary, the work itself was the true expression of mastery. The 3 stone slabs were sliced not only on the surface but also into thin segments. Since the symbols formed words, there had to be multiple pieces. By fully sectioning the 3 stones, Hikaru created at least 5 sets of characters, allowing for the formation of complete sentences. Clatter. As the cut stone pieces fell into place, they aligned perfectly, revealing evenly spaced intervals. Hikaru watched intently, unwilling to miss a single moment. A memory surfaced. This style. It resembled the ruins of Alph stone slabs. Could this be due to the influence of Johto's ancient peoples? Or perhaps, was it similar to the tablets carried by Professor Shure in the movie Pokémon, The Spell of the Unknown? Those were wooden tablets, not stone, but they bore similarities to Johto's ancient relics. Across different regions, ancient civilizations had blended their knowledge, producing distinct yet interconnected unknown inscriptions. All such stone tablets could be classified as symbolic tablets. Hikaru picked up a carved tablet. It was small enough to fit between his thumb and forefinger, much like a puzzle piece. His mind filled with new insights. Work completed, symbolic tablet. Description: ancient text engraved in unknown-like symbols, creating a mysterious tablet. Said to contain the essence of creation itself. Effect: enhances the creator's mental strength. Forming words with the symbols establishes a special connection to Pokémon associated with those words, possibly invoking their power. The tablet can also foresee unique Pokémon-related events. Knowledge acquired, +1. Ancient inscriptions: your understanding of all ruin-related knowledge increases by 25%. Hunch, having assisted in the craft, gained experience and leveled up. New move learned, Brick Break. Skill: precision cutting allows highly accurate stone/wood cutting with minimal error. Yo! Hunch felt a surge of new strength and gleefully swung its blade. Hey! Don't wreck the floor! Yo! I got too excited. Lily. Petalil's eyes widened in amazement. She had just witnessed Hunch grow stronger through precise craftsmanship, learning a new move in the process. That meant she could do it too. She needed to tend to the herbs and crops right now. Once she made up her mind, Petalil twirled her leaf-like skirt and gestured at Hikaru, signaling that she wanted to head outside to the fields immediately. Right now? It's still raining, you know, Hikaru pointed out. Then he smacked his forehead, realizing something. Petalil was a grass-type Pokémon. Rain was actually good for her. Petalil explained that, as a Pokémon deeply connected to soil, she felt far more comfortable in the earth than inside a building. And with that, she hopped down from the workbench, bounced to the door, and happily leapt outside. Chapter 28. As Petalil left the workshop, Hikaru turned his attention to the effect of the crafted artifact. Another artifact tied to an event. But why wasn't it marked as a hidden event? The effect seemed difficult to understand at first glance, but after careful thought, its meaning became clear. For instance, the word he was about to piece together. Wait, could this slab attract unknown and pull me into a space-time rift? Hikaru cautiously glanced around, ensuring there were no black, floating eyes appearing before he felt reassured enough to proceed with the inscription. Suikun. The name itself is derived from the Japanese phonetics of Suikun, and unknown's inscriptions are essentially written in Romanized Japanese. Thanks to obtaining the Clear Bell artifact, the first Pokémon that came to Hikaru's mind when considering a name was Suikun. After all, he had been thinking about it not too long ago. As the leader of Ho-Oh's legendary trio and deeply connected to the Clear Bell, Suikun held a special significance. However, Hikaru wasn't planning to capture it mainly because his current strength was nowhere near the level required to do so. Still, if the symbolic slab could establish a connection. Let me take a look at that crystal on your head. What is it made of? Hikaru wasn't sure how to use Suikun's crystal in crafting, but perhaps it wasn't about the crystal itself but rather the energy it emitted. Suikun's abilities seemed to originate from that gem atop its head. As for Ho-Oh, it was also rumored to be linked to Unknown and the ancient ruins of the Johto region. If a connection could be established, Hikaru would try to obtain a rainbow feather from it. Of course, the true purpose of crafting the clear bell wasn't to capture these legendary Pokémon, it was simply an effort to explore and develop superior and more mystical crafting techniques. If I can't find Suikun, maybe I can use a substitute. Ancient crystal? Or walking wake? An image of an ancient dragon emerged in Hikaru's mind, a creature bearing an uncanny resemblance to Suikun, but with the appearance of a more raptor-like being. It existed as a paradox counterpart of Suikun, known from the game as an event-exclusive Pokémon. Whoosh! Suddenly, the inscribed symbolic slab began to glow. The unknown-shaped carvings etched into the surface radiated an intense light. At the same time, Hikaru noticed the water bucket inside the workshop. The water inside, once impure and filled with minor debris, was now perfectly pristine, transformed under the influence of the glow. Oh! So this is the so-called connection. Suikun possessed the ability to purify water, turning even the filthiest pools into crystal-clear sources. Known as the embodiment of the North Wind, it had its moments of clumsiness, but this purification ability was uniquely its own. It wasn't tied to any specific move but rather a natural skill. By midnight, Hikaru had finished reorganizing his materials and tools, and drowsiness crept over him. The lights in the workshop dimmed. Hunch leaned against a corner, resting after a busy and fulfilling day. Outside, in the medicinal herb field, Petalil nestled into the soil for a peaceful slumber. In the dead of night, near the workbench, the air distorted slightly. From the unmoving clock, a small, palm-sized eye emerged. Unknown letter E. Hikaru had been living here for quite some time. Unknown had been forced out of the basement and into the workshop. It hid behind cabinets and within the broken old clock, minimizing its movements to avoid detection. As a result, neither Hikaru nor Hunch had noticed its presence. But Unknown had been observing them for a long time. Its eye flickered toward the word Suikun inscribed on the slab, then turned its gaze toward the sleeping Hikaru, whose unconscious body emitted an unintentional pulse of psychic energy. Was this human, a descendant of ancient Johto? Of ancient Sinnoh? Or perhaps the remnants of an even older civilization? So he wanted to see Suikun? But, interestingly enough, he wasn't looking to capture it or challenge it, he simply wanted to examine the crystal on its forehead. What a simple wish! Then let me help you. Unknown were drawn to strong emotions, occasionally manifesting certain desires into reality. While they didn't truly create things, they had the ability to project dreams into tangible experiences, blurring the lines between imagination and the real world. A glow of hidden power enveloped the small workshop, swallowing both Hikaru and Hunch in its mysterious radiance. At that moment, the symbolic slab's inscription of Suikun began to scramble, rearranging itself into a different word. Hikaru found himself standing before the burned tower in Ekrutique City. Oh! A connection has formed. Dreamers rarely realize they are dreaming. Hikaru, too, was unaware that he was inside a dream. His subconscious rationalized his presence in Ekrutique as natural, while his thoughts of unfinished workshop tasks faded into the background. The burned tower. This made sense. In the games, Suikun was first encountered here. According to legend, 3 nameless Pokémon perished in the burned tower 150 years ago, only to be resurrected and transformed by Ho-Oh. Out of gratitude, they became its guardians Suikun, Rei-Kao, and Entei. The trio was said to dwell in the tower's basement, just as depicted in the animated adaptations. However, as per tradition, one couldn't see them from the second floor. One had to descend the staircase to the bottom level. Unknown drifted into Hikaru's dream, blending into the scene. He just wants to see Suikun, right? If he truly wished to meet the real Suikun, there might be a chance in the future. Thus, it followed Hikaru through the dream, ensuring his journey continued smoothly. As they reached the basement, a deep, resonant growl echoed from the darkness. Right, the legendary beasts should be here. But what era is this? Why are they still in the burned tower? Or, have they never left? Hikaru's reasoning kicked in again. Unknown hurriedly intervened, subtly adjusting the dream's narrative to ensure consistency. Only Suicune is here. It simply came back to visit. Perfectly reasonable. Oh, it came back to check on the place. Makes sense. Hikaru nodded in understanding. Oni, Wu, that was close. Searching for reality within a dream was utterly ridiculous. Still, just as expected, the scene conformed to the adjusted dream logic. As the figure emerged from the darkness, it revealed its form a sleek, azure body adorned with white markings. A magnificent blue crystal sat atop its head, while its flowing purple mane resembled a thick, cloud-like shroud. Its white, ribbon-like tails drifted elegantly behind it. Oni, there it is. That's Suicune. Hikaru's eyes widened. Wait a second, what kind of Suicune is this? This isn't Suicune. Roar. The creature stepped fully into view, letting out a fierce snarl. Indeed, its appearance strongly resembled Suicune, but rather than a quadrupedal mammal, its form was distinctly raptor-like. This is Walking Wake. Chapter 29. Walking Wake used War Cry. Hunch's attack and special attack decreased. Why is Walking Wake in the burned tower? This doesn't make sense. Who's setting me up? Were the people of Ecruteak City always this intense? Or did Ho-Oh send a message to gather the legendary beasts, but it got the wrong recipient, and Walking Wake showed up instead? If Suicune represented the calm and gentle side of flowing water, then Walking Wake was the embodiment of water's raging ferocity. Since Hikaru had no idea he was dreaming, he was incredibly tense, while Hunch, who had never seen a Pokémon like this before, was left stunned by the effects of War Cry, feeling slightly dizzy. It turned to Hikaru in confusion. Yo! Oh, so this was Suicune? Why did it look so aggressive? It didn't seem winnable. Maybe just surrender? Hunch was about to give up, sensing the overwhelming difference in power, but Walking Wake wasted no time in launching its next attack. Get ready, Hunch! Hikaru's voice snapped Hunch out of its attempt to surrender. The blade turned sharply, staring at Hikaru with an expression of disbelief. Yo! Yo! Wait, you want me to fight Walking Wake? Seriously? At that moment, strange shimmering crystals began appearing at the burned tower's basement. They looked just like gemstones, creating an environment similar to a crystalline cavern. Shadow Sneak! Hikaru gave the command, and Hunch's shadow quickly shot out, transforming into a sword-shaped strike that slashed at Walking Wake from behind. However, the attack barely phased it. It didn't even flinch, merely slowing its movement for a split second before opening its jaws. A massive pulse of blue energy erupted forward. Water pulse. The powerful surge of water blasted Hunch away. Thankfully, since water-type moves only had a normal effect against steel types, Hunch was lucky it hadn't been confused by the attack. That means we can keep fighting. Water Pulse had a 20% chance to confuse its target, and if luck wasn't on Hikaru's side, Hunch might have ended up attacking itself instead of Walking Wake. Meanwhile, Oni had been floating nearby, completely dumbfounded. Its giant eye was filled with confusion. What is this? Isn't this Suicune? It looks so similar. Is it Suicune's brother or something? No, that couldn't be right. It had been trying to grant this human's wish, and the word Hikaru inscribed with the symbolic slab was clearly Suicune. So why did its form change? Look, it has a crystal on its forehead just like Suicune. It knows Water Pulse, so it's definitely a water type. How could it not be Suicune? Oh! This must be a nightmare. Oni believed it had found the answer. Certain wild ghost-type Pokémon like Haunter, Misdreavus, and Mismagius were known to interfere with people's dreams, twisting their perception and altering reality to scare unsuspecting dreamers. This was likely due to the move Nightmare, which wasn't exclusive to Darkrai but could be used by many ghost types. A ghost-type Pokémon must have invaded the dream. With this conclusion, Oni prepared to search for the non-existent culprit while Hikaru's battle against dream-formed Walking Wake reached a dangerous turning point. From base stats, move pool, and typing, Hunch had no chance of winning. Walking Wake was a water/dragon type, meaning it only had two weaknesses: dragon and fairy. To make matters worse, Hunch had the ability No Guard, which meant that even if it tried to dodge, every attack from Walking Wake was guaranteed to hit. Reflect. With no other choice, Hikaru decided to put up a defense even if it wouldn't do much. Hunch conjured Reflect, a technique it had learned from the ancient bracelet. The barrier would have the damage of incoming physical attacks. But Walking Wake merely smirked, its mouth beginning to glow with intense fire. It was using Flamethrower. Hunch's eye nearly popped out of its hilt in shock. It spun around desperately, pleading to Hikaru for help. Yo yo yo! Help! Isn't this thing supposed to be a water type? Why is it using flamethrower? I'm a steel type, one hit from that and I'll be smelted into a katana. Hikaru's hands frantically searched through his bag. He was sweating as he realized Reflect was useless against special attacks like flamethrower. Then, his fingers brushed against an item. My focus sash. A red sash with yellow accents was pulled from his bag. When held, this item ensures that if the user is at full HP, they will survive a fatal attack with exactly 1 HP. Unfortunately, Hunch wasn't at full health. But Hikaru had another idea. He pulled out a max potion. A brief logical thought crossed his mind. Wait, when did I buy this? But the thought was quickly ignored. It didn't matter. Use it first, think later. With a swift throw, Hikaru tossed the focus sash to Hunch while using the max potion. At that moment, flamethrower erupted through the basement, engulfing everything in flames. Hunch caught the sash, and thanks to the max potion, it survived though its blade was now scorched black. Yo! Hunch glared at the ancient dragon in front of it, feeling like an absolute legend. Meanwhile, Hikaru's own body was charred from the fire, but in his subconscious, he believed that humans in the Pokémon world were ridiculously tough, so he figured he'd be fine. Walking Wake growled in shock. It was baffled. How did they not fall? But Hikaru was even more shocked. As he dug through his bag, he realized something terrifying. He could pull out any item he wanted. Did he just unlock Doraemon's 4-dimensional pocket? Wait. Could this be a dream? Before he had time to process this thought, the battle continued. Lighten your body. Take this, then use Fury Cutter. Hunch threw away its scabbard, increasing its speed drastically. At the same time, Hikaru tossed it another item, a metronome. Metronome boosts the power of a repeated move, increasing its damage by 20% per consecutive use, up to 200%. Hunch soared into the air and began slashing Walking Wake continuously. The ancient dragon retaliated, wildly whipping its crystalline head and tail, trying to knock Hunch down. Fury Cutter's power kept stacking higher and higher. The crystal on Walking Wake's head was soon covered in sword marks, with shards scattering from the strikes. Furious, it suddenly reared its head. A phantom sun appeared in the sky. Sunny day. At the same time, its body surged with power. Its ability Protosynthesis was activated. When the weather is sunny, its highest stat increases by 30% or by 50% if that stat is speed. Walking Wake let out a roar, readying its final attack. Breaking Swipe. A wide, sweeping attack hitting all opponents on the field. With immense force, Walking Wake's tail swung in a devastating arc, striking Hunch in midair and sending it crashing to the ground. Hunch was thrown violently across the battlefield, barely managing to stabilize itself. But Walking Wake wasn't done. It opened its jaws once more, this time gathering intense heat and pressure. A surge of boiling water, bubbling with intense steam. Its signature move, Steam Surge. This attack unleashed scalding hot water onto its opponent. And thanks to Sunny Day, instead of being weakened, its power increased by 1.5x. Substitute. Hikaru reacted immediately, commanding Hunch to create a decoy. The sword trembled for a moment before generating a shadowy double of itself. The scorching steam surged forward, colliding with the substitute. When Walking Wake realized it had been tricked, its eyes narrowed. The real Hunch was swaying slightly, its energy almost depleted. HP is running low. Catch this max potion. Without hesitation, Hikaru pulled another healing item from his bag and threw it toward Hunch. He had no idea why his bag seemed to have an infinite supply of useful items, but at this moment, it felt like an echo of a past life. His instincts as a potion-spamming champion from countless Pokémon battles had been awakened. And take these Eviolite and Berry. A faint purple stone was tossed toward Hunch, which caught it and locked it into a slot on its hilt. At the same time, Hikaru also handed it a red cocoa bean-like berry, the Berry. Eviolite boosts the defense and special defense of an unevolved Pokémon. Berry reduces the damage taken from super-effective fire-type attacks. With these, there was no longer any fear of flamethrower. Meanwhile, Walking Wake, being a paradox version of Suicune, was suspected to have originated from an alternate timeline. But none of the Pokémon from its era had ever encountered these kinds of items or strategies before. It was growing increasingly frustrated. Why wouldn't they go down? A battle in Burned Tower, encountering a seemingly unkillable floating sword and a trainer who endlessly pulled out healing items despite its overwhelming power, Walking Wake was being pushed to its limit. Even though the level gap is huge, it's about to lose. Use metal sound. Hikaru continued pulling items from his seemingly bottomless bag, directing Hunch to strike back. But now, Walking Wake had had enough. At first, it had ignored Hikaru, focusing only on its opponent. But now, it realized it didn't have to follow any of the so-called rules of Pokémon battles. Why fight the Pokémon, when it could just attack the trainer directly? Chapter 30. Walking Wake unleashed another steam surge. Confident in its defense, Hunch braced itself for impact only to realize a second later that the attack was a feint. Substitute. Hikaru quickly issued the command, and Hunch conjured another decoy. However, Walking Wake completely ignored the substitute and lunged straight at Hikaru. It had only used Steam Surge to create an opening. Crunch! The massive dragon jaw snapped toward Hikaru. Right. Wild Pokémon don't play by battle rules. At that moment, Hikaru dug desperately into his bag. Item acquired, Rusted Shield. The Rusted Shield, the legendary artifact of Zamazan Tao, one of Galar's heroic Pokémon. A medium-sized shield, tarnished with age but still bearing its mythical strength. Perfect timing. Hikaru immediately raised the rusted shield to block the attack. Crunch! Walking Wake clamped down on the shield, its sharp teeth gnawing against the ancient metal. But this was the very shield once wielded by the Shield King, Zamazan Tao, practically an extension of its own body. It wasn't going to break so easily. However, Walking Wake wasn't deterred. Instead, it simply wrenched the rusted shield away from Hikaru and tossed it aside with brute force. Humans couldn't match a dragon's raw strength. But that was enough time to counterattack. With his free hand now available, Hikaru quickly gave another command. Metal sound. A piercing screech filled the air, sending shudders of pain through Walking Wake's body. Psycho Cut. A blade of psychic energy materialized and slashed into Walking Wake. With its defenses weakened, the impact staggered it. Now was the time. Hikaru reached into his bag and performed another god-tier grab. A green, sticky orb was pulled out. Sticky glob ready for battle. Without hesitation, Hikaru hurled the sticky glob at Walking Wake and immediately dashed away. He continued flinging multiple globs, pelting the Pokémon relentlessly. Even for Walking Wake, the repeated hits took their toll. Sticky globs were designed to slow Pokémon down, sometimes even causing them to stumble and freeze for 5 seconds. The ancient dragon wobbled as dizziness overtook it. Not understanding the nature of this strange item, it refused to dodge, allowing itself to be struck over and over again. Next step, Heavy Ball. A black, heavy Pokeball emerged from Hikaru's bag. Heavy Ball. Sticky Glob and Heavy Ball, an unstoppable combo. Hikaru threw the Heavy Ball with full force, smashing it directly against Walking Wake's body. The Heavy Ball, black with intricate grey markings, was an advanced form of the standard Heavy Ball. Though difficult to throw over long distances, if it landed on an unaware Pokémon, it greatly boosted capture chances. However, a one-shot catch wasn't that easy. Despite the powerful item, Walking Wake burst out of the Heavy Ball, cracking the ball's surface in the process. Freed and furious, Walking Wake let out a rage-filled roar only to be pelted by another wave of sticky globs. Followed by yet another Heavy Ball. Bam! This was the battle style of Hisui trainers. By continuously stunning the target with sticky globs and striking from behind, one could execute the secret technique. Back strike. Which was really just hitting the Pokémon when it wasn't looking. Hikaru's endless bag of supplies ensured that sticky globs and heavy balls kept coming without pause. Even Hunch, which had rushed forward to assist, ended up doing nothing. Seeing the sticky globs reminded it of a certain traumatic incident from a week ago. Unpleasant memories increased. Hunch, keep using Metal Sound and Psycho Cut. If it ever turns toward me, use Shadow Sneak to distract it. Hunch twirled its hilt in agreement. Meanwhile, Hikaru secretly signaled it in hand gestures. Time for an advanced field tactic forced position swap. As planned, Hunch created another substitute exactly where Hikaru had been standing. Everything was going according to strategy. Checkmate. Roar. Walking Wake broke free from another heavy ball and immediately lunged at Hikaru, or so it thought. It whipped its tail toward the trainer. Only to strike Hunch's substitute instead. Hey! Thwack! At that exact moment, another sticky glob struck its face, stunning it once more. Followed by a third heavy ball. Ruoar! Its furious cry echoed through the burned tower, its voice unfiltered by the Pokeball seal. Hikaru realized something. Pokeballs in Hisui didn't have soundproof technology like modern-day ones. That meant Pokémon could hear everything happening outside while inside the ball. So, Walking Wake was fully aware of Hikaru's antics. Walking Wake broke free over and over again, but each time, it was struck by a new sticky glob and another heavy ball. With repeated metal sound and psycho cut weakening it further. Finally, on the 8th attempt, the ancient dragon collapsed from exhaustion. One final heavy ball landed cleanly. And this time, it stayed shut. The heavy ball wobbled intensely for several seconds. Then, at last, it stopped moving. Victory! Ha! Hikaru exhaled, his body drenched in sweat. Did I win this battle without using a Pokémon? No, technically he did use a Pokémon. This was what it meant to be a Pokémon trainer. A Pokémon battle was more than just having Pokémon fight each other. The trainer's own actions played a huge role. This had been one of the toughest wild encounters Hikaru had ever experienced. With the battlefield's tight space, the flammable wooden structure, and the overwhelming power difference, everything had been stacked against him. But in the end, the result was all that mattered. Walking Wake has been caught. Though it's only in a dream. Hikaru sighed, just as new knowledge flooded into his mind. The Dragon Slate's wisdom. So this was why. The Dragon Slate had granted him this insight. Hikaru held the heavy ball and focused. The knowledge told him that only in close proximity to Dragon-type Pokémon could this power take effect. He reached out, sending a calming pulse toward the Pokeball. Then, cautiously he opened it. Walking Wake reappeared, its eyes filled with wariness. Grr! It still didn't understand what had happened. At first, it had completely dismissed Hikaru. But now? Its attitude shifted. It was curious. It was cautious. And it was afraid. This human should have died, but no matter what it threw at him, he never fell. What are you? Walking Wake growled in confusion. And yet its territorial aggression had completely vanished. Hikaru listened. Through Dragon Tamer intuition, he heard Walking Wake's thoughts. Unfamiliar surroundings. Intruders in its domain. Anxious instincts warning it that something was wrong. I think this is all just a dream. This isn't your real territory. Walking Wake's eyes widened. Hikaru continued. But it's okay. This place will disappear soon. You'll go back to where you belong. Then, he reached into his bag. And pulled out a pecha berry. Hikaru looked up and spoke directly to Walking Wake. The ancient dragon let out a startled growl. Wait, this human can hear my thoughts. Yet. Ever since we made contact, Hikaru replied calmly. Walking Wake's confusion deepened. In all its existence, it had never encountered a human with such an unnatural ability. But then, its eyes flickered toward something else. The pink fruit Hikaru was holding. A pecha berry. Even in its own prehistoric world, similar sweet fruits had existed. And this particular kind was one of its absolute favorites. Pokémon with an impatient nature tend to love sweet flavors and dislike sour ones, Hikaru mused. Among all berries, pecha berries are the sweetest. Many Pokémon love them. With a casual motion, Hikaru tossed the pecha berry toward Walking Wake's feet. I've got plenty. Eat as much as you want. Walking Wake hesitated, then lowered its head. After a moment of cautious sniffing, it finally took a small bite. And immediately, the sweetness flooded its mouth. For the first time since this battle started, Walking Wake let out a low, satisfied hum. Yo! Hunch floated closer, its expression relieved. That was when Hikaru noticed. His body was turning transparent. Not just him Hunch, Walking Wake, even the surroundings of burned tower were starting to fade. The dream was ending. Too bad. I never got to see Suicune. But before everything vanished, Hikaru had one last request. Sorry, but could you show me your forehead crest? Walking Wake blinked. Even now, after everything, he was still asking about that? At first, it seemed reluctant. Then, after a moment of thought, the ancient dragon slowly stepped forward and lowered its head. Tiny fragments of its crest crumbled to the ground, remnants from Hunch's earlier attacks. Hikaru carefully picked up a piece, running his fingers over its smooth, gemstone-like texture. It was remarkable. A material unlike anything found in the modern world, yet it felt so familiar. Just as I thought, you really are Suikun's paradox form. Walking Wake studied Hikaru closely. Just a short while ago, it had viewed him as nothing more than prey. But now, it felt something entirely different. A strange, almost instinctual recognition. The instinct of a dragon. For ancient Pokémon, the law of battle was simple. The defeated submits to the victor. And if this human was actually one of its own kind, then submission was only natural. At first, Walking Wake had thought Hikaru was just a weak, ordinary human. But after their battle, it saw something else. Not a human. A humanoid dragon. Humph. Guess that's fine, then. Chapter 31. Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the fanfic. If you do, please leave a review. If we reach 15, I'll upload a new chapter. Thanks. Hikaru reached out to touch the massive gemstone, closely observing its composition. The ancient treasure hunter's knowledge activated. Rare material, crown crystal of Walking Wake. Description: similar in nature to the water stone, but with a more crystalline appearance. Compared to Suikun's crystal crown, the crown of Walking Wake is much larger, with slightly different composition. The colors at the edges are lighter and more translucent, seemingly infused with Terra energy. Clue: brilliant crystal, a high concentration of crystallized Terra energy that emerges from the underground, appearing as massive, radiant crystals. Found in the Paldea region/North Province. Clue: Walking Wake's crystal obtained from the crown of Walking Wake. As part of a Pokémon's body, the crown naturally wears down and gets replaced over time. This crystal is a fragment of its body. Clue: ancient crystal, a mysterious crystal from ancient times, containing inexplicable power that allows Pokémon to communicate their will to humans. Found in Iceberg Ruins, Rock Mountain Ruins, and Black Gold Ruins. 3 valuable clues about crystals at once. However, none of them were physically obtained. Since materials couldn't be directly retrieved from the dream world, Hikaru would have to wait until Unova's dream research made further progress before attempting to collect them. I wonder if they've succeeded in that research yet. I'll check online when I get back, Hikaru mused. His body started to dim as he gently placed down the heavy ball and waved. Thank you. See you next time. No, maybe we'll never meet again. After all, Walking Wake was a Pokémon from a distant world. Roa. Walking Wake narrowed its eyes slightly, puzzled. It glanced at the heavy ball Hikaru had left on the ground, then picked it up in its jaws, memorizing Hikaru's scent. It still wanted more Pecha berries. Just then, ripples of space-time energy surged around Walking Wake, as if some distant force was calling it. Soon, both the Pokémon and the heavy ball vanished. At the last moment before disappearing, the appearance of the heavy ball seemed to change. It turned into a pink dream ball. Meanwhile, Unoni, which had been searching for a non-existent ghost-type Pokémon, didn't reappear in the real world. Instead, it was forcibly ejected back into the rift of space-time where it originally resided. Within the space-time rift, many other Unknown floated around. It was one of their dwelling places. Something was reaching through the rift, calling. The Unknown observed as several Pokémon were being summoned across time and space to a distant land. Unoni felt a familiar energy. Among the Pokémon traveling through time, one was identical to the fake Suicune from the dream. However, something was off. Unlike the others, this one's destination seemed different, as if it had taken a detour. The dream shattered. Hikaru gradually woke up in bed, while Hunch jolted awake in the corner. It feels like something was here. A ghost Pokémon. Hikaru sensed an unusual atmosphere in the room but couldn't pinpoint the source. Only the deep impression of the material knowledge from the dream reminded him that it wasn't an ordinary dream. Feeling puzzled, Hikaru reached around his bed and suddenly felt something solid. It was a blue crystal, its color nearly identical to Walking Wake's crown. His mind reeled. Captured Walking Wake, dream. Due to the knowledge of the dragon tamer profession, your bond with Walking Wake has begun to sprout. Due to the connection with the symbolic tablet, you and Walking Wake have formed a strong link. Perhaps you will meet again someday. Obtained rare material, fragment of Walking Wake's crown. Gained knowledge, +1. Dream treasure hunter, occasionally, you will passively enter a Pokémon's dream. Each time you do, there is a chance to bring something back from its dream world. Acquired crafting skill, +1. Crystal processing, C+ a rare crafting technique that allows processing of any crystal. Properly refined, crystals can be turned into specific special items. All crystal crafts created by you will have a mild purifying effect on the mind. Possible item, clear bell. Required crafting skills, 3. Meeting again someday. Goodness. Hikaru's thoughts scattered in all directions. If Walking Wake's crystal could be used to craft a clear bell, then Toho, using Walking Wake's crystal to create a bell was definitely not an official endorsement. But if it actually summoned Ho-Oh, wouldn't it feel something was off? This bell sounds weird. Why does it have a dragon's roar? And the dream world? Pokémon's dream world. So, the dream I just had in Burn Tower wasn't my dream? It was Walking Wake's? But why? Why would an ancient paradox version of Suicune dream about a modern-day Ho-Oh? It did. Oh. Right. Burn Tower actually belonged to Lugia. If this were the Enterlink Forest in Unova, Pokémon from dreams could be brought into reality. The Dream World Pokémon would materialize at the cost of berries, appearing as if summoned from elsewhere. Did I just capture Walking Wake? I should visit Enterlink Forest. Maybe I can summon it there. But in Unova, Enterlink Forest is a secret location, hardly anyone knows about it. I wonder if they've developed the sea gear for entering dreams yet. There were many hidden locations in this world, and the Divine Capital, where Hikaru lived, was one of them. Technically, Walking Wake should only appear in Paldea. It would need a time machine to reach this world. Hikaru shook his head, pushing away these chaotic thoughts, and focused on the 3 crafting techniques he had discovered. Flame forging, crystal processing, and pokeball net weaving. He had already acquired one. The next logical step was flame forging, which seemed easiest to obtain. The workshop definitely has a forge. Hikaru muttered to himself as Hunch groggily woke up, joining in a discussion about their shared dream. This surprised Hikaru. Was the Hunch in my dream the same as in reality? Yo! The two stared at each other in amazement. Hikaru approached his work table and noticed something unusual. The letters formed by the symbolic tablet were supposed to spell Suicune, but the dragon tablet, originally pressed under his computer, had somehow shifted and come into contact with the symbolic tablet. The two seemed to attract each other. As a result, the letters rearranged into Walking Wake, forming a long string of romanized characters. What an incredible discovery! If I arrange Entei and Reikau's names, could I meet Gouging Fire and Raging Bolt in the dream world too? Let's try it when I'm stronger. Hunch. Hikaru turned around and saw a startling sight. A faint white glow enveloped Hunch. It shuddered in confusion as its body began to change. One blade split into 2. Under Hikaru's stunned gaze, Hunch evolved. Defeating Walking Wake in a dream also gives experience. Well, I guess the dream world is an important part of the Pokémon world. Hikaru clapped his hands together. If dream berries, materials, and even Pokémon can be brought out, then of course experience points can too. Yu. With an odd, heavy tone, 2 crossed swords appeared before Hikaru. Its eyes and ribbon turned magenta, and a shield now rested on its back. The 2 sword hilts and the shield seemed fused together. Congratulations! Hunch has evolved into Dao Blade. New moves learned, Revenge, Iron Defense. X. Dao Blade seemed completely baffled at what had just happened. But soon, it realized. Yo up! Hikaru! Someone is copying my face. X2. Johto Region, Celebes Forest. Suicune, who had been resting, suddenly jolted awake, looking around warily. It had just experienced a dream, a vision where Unknown appeared, along with a human, a sword-shaped Pokémon it had never seen before, and a dragon-type Pokémon that bore an uncanny resemblance to itself, yet was entirely different. In the dream, Suicune felt as if it had become a mere observer, watching helplessly as the group battled fiercely at the bottom of the burned tower, slashing, spewing fire, and even unleashing high-temperature water jets. Hey! This is the burned tower, the legendary Pokémon's tower. How could they be so reckless? Wait, something's wrong. Why the burned tower? Suicune abruptly stood up, realizing that this dream might not be a simple illusion, it could be an omen. Could it mean that the burned tower had been destroyed? Even though that tower did not belong to Ho-Oh but rather Lugia, if the burned tower were to be demolished, wouldn't the bell tower also be in danger? And the Unknown, they seemed to have become active again. The unknown residing in the ruins evolve. Could they be the source of this dream? Perhaps it should seek out the unknown and ask. With a sense of urgency, Suicune wasted no time. Ignoring the hour of the night, it leaped over lakes and forests, riding the north wind straight toward Ekrutique City. Galar region, Glimwood Tangle. By the lake near the hero's ruin, thick fog rolled in, and within the mist, the silhouette of a Pokémon emerged. However, it was not an actual Pokémon, but rather a projection, a spectral illusion. It took the form of a large, red and blue canine Pokémon. The red coloration dominated most of its body, while the blue was concentrated on its legs, tail, and head. One of its ears appeared to be missing a piece, with a tuft of fur sticking up, and scars covered its body like battle-worn markings. Its face resembled a small shield. The King of Shields, Zamazenta. The illusion of Zamazenta stood before the ruins, staring at the decayed shield placed inside the monument, filled with confusion. At first, it had thought that someone had stolen the shield, but the shield was still here. Then why had it dreamed of someone wielding it? It seemed as if something had sent the shield flying, but the details remained unclear. How strange! It appeared that the hero of shields would not be appearing anytime soon. The shield had remained here for far too long. It had completely rotted away. Zamazenta paced around the ancient, forgotten forest for a short while but found no signs of intruders. With that, its illusion dissipated, leaving the ruins as if it had never been there. Unova region, Entralink. At the heart of Unova lay Entralink Forest, an enigmatic place that, when viewed on a map, closely resembled a Pokeball. This forest was an inexplicable location, deeply intertwined with other worlds. And yet, very few in Unova were even aware of its existence. It remained one of the Pokémon world's greatest secrets. A walking wake shook its head, surveying the deep, eerie forest. There wasn't a single soul here, only an unnerving silence. Moments ago, it had been pulled through space and time by some mysterious force, but for some reason, it had ended up in this forest. Where was that humanoid dragon? And where was its trainer? It placed a pink Pokeball beside itself and began inspecting the area. Wait a second, why are there no Pecha berries in this forest? Walking Wake let out a huff of frustration. As it continued searching, it unknowingly wandered to the edge of another Pokémon's dream. Pink mist swirled around within it, gigantic dragon Pokémon similar to itself emerged. The true world lies here. The ideal world lies here. Two equally mighty voices echoed through the mist. Walking Wake scratched its chest in irritation. Ruoar. What are these mist dwellers babbling about? The real question is, are there Pecha berries here or not? The Two Clouds of Mist. Chapter 32. Hi, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the fanfic. If you do, please leave a review. If we reach 15, I'll upload a new chapter. Thanks. As time passed, a package from a distant land successfully arrived at the Pokémon Center in Azalea Town. An evolutionary stone. TL Eviolite or evolution stone, both are correct. Recalling the conversation he had with the craftsman, Bugsy carefully took out a smooth, pale purple stone from the package. Without hesitation, he immediately called out his Scyther. Cha! Bugsy's Scyther was a Pokémon he had worked incredibly hard to capture, and it was his favorite Pokémon. This time, he had specifically purchased a durability-enhancing item to further strengthen it. For Bug-type Pokémon, the most commonly used enhancement item was Silver Powder, making it the preferred choice for most Bug-type trainers. Silver Powder was composed of the scales from Butterfree and Dustox, and when held, it could boost the power of Bug-type moves. Since Bug-types generally had lower offensive power, increasing their attack potential was crucial. However, as a Bug-type researcher, Bugsy understood that raw power alone was not always the answer. If an attack couldn't hit the opponent, or if his Pokémon couldn't withstand super effective moves, then raw strength would be meaningless. Cha! Scyther stared at the pale purple stone. To humans, an evolutionary stone was just a stone. They couldn't perceive the strange energy within it. But to Pokémon, they could sense its unique energy and resonate with it. Curious, Scyther reached out and tapped the evolutionary stone with the tip of its scythe. The moment it made contact, a peculiar warmth surged through its body. Its eyes instantly sharpened. What was this surging feeling? Scyther could tell that the stone was truly beneficial to its strength. At the same time, it began to understand what this strange sensation was. Although it had never experienced this state before, Pokémon were born with an instinctive understanding of evolution. Most Pokémon simply didn't know what they would evolve into, or whether they could evolve at all. There was no doubt this feeling was evolution. Cha! Excited, Scyther raised both of its scythe-like arms, but after a long while, it glanced down at its body in confusion. Nothing had changed. Cha! Scyther turned to its trainer, staring at him with a puzzled expression. Was this stone a fake? Did you get scammed? Bugsy, who had been observing the entire process closely, chuckled. An evolutionary stone doesn't actually cause evolution, it resonates with the latent evolutionary energy within Pokémon that can evolve, Bugsy explained, confirming that what Hikaru had told him was true. Seeing Scyther's perplexed expression, he patted its shoulder. This isn't an evolution item, but it seems like it enhances your defenses and helps you grow stronger in battle. I don't know the exact effects yet, so let's test it out. Cha! Scyther responded with determination. Bugsy secured a sturdy leather strap around Scyther's waist and placed the evolutionary stone inside it, effectively equipping it. Almost immediately, Scyther could feel a subtle energy circulating within its body. Although the sensation was faint, it could tell that its scythes and body had grown tougher and stronger. Was it just an illusion? Scyther wasn't sure, but it felt great. At that moment, a challenger arrived at the gym. Bugsy glanced at Scyther, who was currently slashing at the air. It's in peak condition, perfect timing to test out this new item. Although Bugsy only intended to conduct a simple trial, the outcome completely exceeded his expectations. The challenger was a bird keeper, who had already earned 2 gym badges. Since different trainers had different starting points, the order in which they challenged gyms also varied. As a bird keeper specialized in flying-type Pokémon, he seemed extremely confident in his abilities and wasted no time sending out his Pokémon. Go, Fearow! Flying types are the best choice against bug types. A large bird Pokémon took to the battlefield, its feathers a striking orange, crowned with red plumage on its head. It had a sharp, pink beak and broad wings that stretched wide. Bugsy, of course, sent out Scyther. Cha! Scyther felt like it was in its best form. Locking eyes with the airborne Fearow, it let out a threatening cry, flashing its twin scythes in anticipation. Like most trainers, Birdkeeper firmly believed in the principle of whoever strikes first, wins. Use peck. Fearow's long, pointed beak was its greatest weapon, perfect for attacking small bug types. Bugsy acted swiftly. Double team. Whoosh. In an instant, multiple illusions of Scyther materialized, causing Fearow's attack to miss. Birdkeeper clicked his tongue in annoyance and immediately commanded, use wing attack to clear those illusions. Fearow flapped its powerful wings, sweeping through the afterimages. But in that split second, Bugsy gave the next command. Fury Cutter. You're absolutely right. Appin should be Bugsy, as he is the Azalea Town gym leader, and the opponent's name is unclear. I'll make the corrections and ensure all names are accurate in future translations. Here is the corrected version. Scyther's illusions were swiftly shattered as its massive scythe struck Fearow, unleashing a barrage of consecutive slashes. However, bug-type moves had naturally low base power. Even though Fury Cutter increased in strength with each consecutive hit, it was still not enough to significantly threaten a flying-type Pokémon. Fearow, use Fury Attack. Fearow's sharp beak clashed against Scyther's rapidly swinging scythes, sparks flying as they collided in midair. At that moment, the Birdkeeper issued a new command Wing Attack. Caught off guard, Scyther was struck directly and sent flying. However, the anticipated instant victory did not occur. Scyther merely shook itself off and quickly regained its stance, letting out a confused cha. It had been hit by Wing Attack, yet it barely felt any damage. Bugsy, having studied bug-type Pokémon for years, could easily gauge the extent of damage his Pokémon sustained. Scyther had been caught off guard, and Fearow's large wings made it difficult to dodge in close combat. Yet, the lack of significant damage could only mean one thing: the evolutionary stone was working. The Craftsman had claimed that it could significantly enhance both of a Pokémon's defenses, and that appeared to be true. What's going on? The Birdkeeper, now visibly unsettled, couldn't understand what was happening. A flying-type Pokémon should have had a clear advantage over a bug-type, and unless there was a massive strength gap, there was no reason for it to be ineffective. Use Steel Wing. Fearow's wings gleamed with a metallic sheen as powerful gusts of wind stirred up the battlefield. Meanwhile, Bugsy gave a calm command, Swords Dance. Scyther endured the impact of Steel Wing head-on yet once again, the attack barely phased it. Since Steel Wing was not a flying-type move, it lacked the super effective advantage, making it far less effective against Scyther's newly reinforced defenses. After tanking the hit, Scyther remained poised, a smirk forming on its face as it provocatively twirled its scythes. Up in the air, Firo was beginning to grow nervous. It was supposed to dominate this battle effortlessly, yet this bug was different. Again, Firo. You swing attack. The bird keeper refused to back down. Firo responded to its trainer's command, diving in for another attack. But Bugsy was ready. Scyther, use brick break. Just as Firo swooped down for another strike, Scyther lunged forward, a feral grin on its face. Raising its scythe high, it slashed downward, striking Firo and sending it crashing into the ground. As the dust settled, Firo's eyes had turned into spirals. It had fainted. The battle continued with 2 more rounds, but the outcome remained the same. The gym battle was a 3-on-3 match, yet Bugsy's Scyther alone defeated all 3 flying-type Pokémon, sweeping the challenger's entire team. It was evident that Firo was the bird keeper's strongest Pokémon. The next 2 Pokémon Hoot Hoot and Pidgeotto stood no chance at all. Cha! Scyther raised its scythes high, absolutely exhilarated. It had never experienced such a satisfying battle before, a 1-against-3 sweep, completely obliterating an opponent's entire team. And more importantly, the opponent used flying-type Pokémon. For a bug-type Pokémon, nothing was more thrilling than defeating its natural predator in a head-on fight. If this had been a battle in the wild, Scyther was convinced that it would have become the leader of all bug-type Pokémon. The mere sound of its scythes alone would send the local bird Pokémon scattering in fear. Ugh! I lost. The bird keeper, disheartened, left the gym in disappointment, vowing to train harder and return for a rematch. Meanwhile, Bugsy approached Scyther, placing a hand on its shoulder. His expression was one of complete astonishment. The evolutionary stone, that stone actually made a bug-type Pokémon completely unfazed by flying types. The sheer power of this revelation left Bugsy stunned. He carefully removed the evolutionary stone from Scyther's belt and returned to the gym's rest area. Without wasting time, he powered on his computer and sent a detailed message to a special contact, someone who might have more knowledge about the stone. The recipient? Professor Elm. New Bark Town, Johto Region. A stone? That's not really my field of study. In Professor Elm's lab in New Bark Town, the renowned researcher scratched his head as he read Bugsy's message. As a professor specializing in Pokémon breeding and egg groups, evolutionary stones weren't exactly within his area of expertise. Professor Elm had the classic appearance of a scientist, tall, wearing oval glasses, a white research coat, and a greenish-blue shirt paired with grass-green pants. His coat pockets were always stuffed with notebooks and pens, filled with endless research notes. The only thing that stood out about his otherwise tidy appearance was a nest-like tuft of messy hair on his forehead. However, after reading Bugsy's message, particularly the claim that holding an evolutionary stone greatly increased the defenses of unevolved Pokémon, his expression turned serious. This could have major implications for Pokémon egg groups and juvenile stage Pokémon. Although Scyther wasn't considered a weak Pokémon, it was still classified as unevolved. Professor Elm's primary research focused on Pokémon breeding and eggs. For example, Togepi's egg had only recently been discovered, previously labeled a mystery egg. Many pre-evolutions of Pokémon had been identified through his research, and from the way the evolutionary stone was described, it seemed that unevolved Pokémon, particularly juvenile forms, were its ideal users. However, the fact that Scyther could also use it made perfect sense. It did have an evolution. Professor Elm sighed, shaking his head. The concept of Pokémon evolution was truly profound. Weak Pokémon struggled to evolve, only to realize that even stronger Pokémon could continue evolving beyond them. Unfortunately, evolution itself was not his area of expertise. His research was only adjacent to it, serving as a foundation for breeding studies. If anyone could answer this question properly, it would be someone from Sinnoh region, Professor Rowan. Thus, after some thought and a bit of research, Professor Elm forwarded the inquiry to another expert. None other than Professor Oak, the foremost authority in the Pokémon world. Chapter 33. Stone. Professor Elm quickly received a response from Professor Oak, who suggested that this question regarding the newly discovered evolution stone should actually be directed to Professor Solans in the Hoenn region. However, since Professor Elm wasn't particularly familiar with Professor Solans, and given that Professor Oak was his mentor, he naturally sought out Oak first. After listening to Professor Elm's account, Professor Oak found himself deeply intrigued by this so-called evolution stone. A stone like this exists. It provides defensive benefits to Pokémon that do not evolve, carries the name evolution, yet does not function like an evolutionary stone. This is an entirely new type of rock never seen before. Perhaps it's a meteorite from space. Indeed, we should inform the experts in Hone. In fact, I'll also reach out to my old friend Professor Yamanashi in Sinnoh. Since his main research field is Pokémon evolution, he would definitely be very interested in this stone. Oh, by the way, does Bugsy have any more evolution stones? Professor Elm quickly responded, no, I don't think so. You want to study it, right? But according to him, he only bought one, and as for the craftsman who sold it to him, well, that's unknown. The craftsman is said to be from a rather remote location. Professor Oak nodded. I see. A previously unexplored area or a distant wilderness. It makes sense that such places could still hold many secrets. Discovering unknown mystical objects is not unusual. If we could contact that craftsman. No, let's wait until I discuss this with the others first. Different regions, natural terrains, material compositions, Pokémon species, and even ecosystems, there are still countless mysteries waiting to be uncovered. It's truly exciting. Hone Region, Fall Arbor Town. Fall Arbor Town was a small agricultural settlement in the northwest of Hone, situated close to Mt. Chimney. Due to its proximity to the volcano, ash frequently drifted into the area, but this volcanic ash enriched the soil, making the local vegetation flourish. One of the more well-known professors in the Pokémon research community, Professor Solons, resided here. He was renowned for his studies on meteorites and rocks, as Fall Arbor Town's location provided easy access to both Mt. Chimney and Meteor Falls, making it a prime spot for excavation. Occasionally, Professor Solons would also travel to Moss Deep City, located in the Eastern Sea, to conduct further meteorite research at the Moss Deep Space Center. Of course, as someone passionate about meteorites and rock excavation, it was only natural that he had a friend who shared a similar obsession with stones. Professor Solons had the appearance of a rugged field geologist. He wore an explorer's outfit, glasses, and had a tall, lean frame with sharp, observant eyes. An evolution stone? I've never heard of such a thing. Where was it discovered? Professor Solons was shocked by the message from Professor Oak. Oak was one of the most authoritative figures in Pokémon research, yet even he had never encountered or heard of this stone. A burning passion for studying new rocks ignited within Professor Solons. Indeed, this completely unheard of stone could very well be a new type of meteorite. However, upon learning that the stone's origins were unclear, that it had been sold to a gym leader in Johto by a craftsman from a distant land, his excitement was immediately dampened. A craftsman from a faraway place. That phrase alone suggested that reaching that location would be difficult. Perhaps it was from a distant region like Kalos or Galar. But then, how did its logistics reach Johto? It must have been transported via cargo planes from Unova. After listening to Professor Oak's brief explanation, Professor Solons couldn't shake his curiosity. Even though evolution, egg groups, and weaker Pokémon were not within his usual research scope, the properties of valuable stones and the reason why this particular one possessed such a unique effect were at the very core of his expertise. Just like the various evolutionary stones that enabled Pokémon evolution, new evolutionary stones were still being discovered one after another. However, since Professor Solons himself couldn't travel to distant regions at the moment due to his ongoing meteorite research, he thought of someone else, someone he could absolutely entrust this task to. And that person happened to be right here. Beep. Beep. Professor Solons dialed a number. After a brief wait, a deep, magnetic voice of a young man answered from the other end. Hello? Professor Solons? It's Steven. What's the matter? It's like this. Professor Solons proceeded to pass on the information once again. Though this I don't know, ask someone familiar, pass it along to another expert. Chain of inquiries seemed somewhat amusing. If this stone's properties were confirmed, it would mark a groundbreaking milestone in the research community. After all, if a stone that increases defense has now been found, could there be others that boost attack, speed, or even vitality? How was it formed? What were its geological conditions? What kind of environment did it originate from? And if it was indeed extraterrestrial, it would involve his primary fields of astronomy and meteorite science. All of these were questions worth investigating. You're saying, what? On the other end of the call, Steven sounded equally stunned. A peculiar and precious gemstone, this was something he was hearing about for the first time. And as Hoen's most renowned and wealthiest gemstone collector, Stephen's enthusiasm skyrocketed. Professor Solons, this is too complicated to discuss over the phone. I'm riding Metagross straight to Fall Arbor Town right now. Don't go anywhere, wait for me. Stephen Stone, full name Stephen Stone of the Devon Corporation. He was not only the champion of the Hoenn region but also the heir of the prestigious Devon Corporation, a renowned business tycoon. At the same time, he was an acclaimed collector of rare gemstones. Although his family's company was headquartered in Rustboro City on Hoenn's western side, Stephen himself resided in Moss Deep City, an island city in the Eastern Sea. After Professor Solons got in touch with Stephen, he resumed discussions with Professor Oak, and Professor Elm also joined the conversation. They conducted their discussion via a video phone. Although called a video phone, in reality, it was more like a specialized machine with multiple functions, with video calling being just one of its standard features. In research labs, these video phones even had the capability to transfer Pokémon remotely over long distances. On the screen, Professor Oak appeared, wearing his signature red shirt and white lab coat, his grey hair neatly combed. About that stone. Professor Elm spoke first. I already inquired with gym leader ABI and learned the name of the craftsman's shop where the stone was sold. It seems that this craftsman has some connection to Mr. Iron. He recently returned from Sinnoh to Johto. No, actually, he's not exactly in Johto. The craftsman is currently somewhere in the northern mountains of Johto. As you said, it's a rather remote location. However, it seems there's still internet access there. Iron. Professor Oak was surprised but quickly expressed his doubts. That doesn't make sense. Iron specializes in crafting Pokeballs, not in processing stones. As the foremost authority in Pokémon research, Professor Oak was acquainted with many renowned figures and counted several as close friends. Mr. Iron was one of them. Professor Elm adjusted his glasses. That's correct. They seem to be just casual acquaintances. Bugsy was introduced to the craftsman through Mr. Iron, but he didn't mention much about the craftsman himself. It seems he wasn't particularly concerned, or maybe he simply trusted. Trusted that he'd provide something of value, right? Professor Oak mused over the video call. It sounds like Iron has a lot of confidence in him. So, what is the name of this shop? Professor Elm immediately responded, Traveler's Workshop. Traveler's Workshop. The name isn't very flashy. I would have expected something a bit more ostentatious, Professor Solons muttered as he opened a browser and conducted a search. I found it. This is the one. But there's no mention of the evolution stone. Professor Solons flipped through a few pages, then scratched his head. Wait, look at the descriptions of the items being sold in this shop. Focus Sash, Focus Band, Black Belt, Cleanse Tag, Spell Tag. Oh, there are some rather rare items here. On the video call, Professor Oak stroked his chin while browsing the shop's inventory. These special items immediately caught his attention. Aside from those, the shop also stocked Power Band, Shell Bell, Firestone, and other uncommon items. Focus Sash? I've never seen one before. It looks like a simple armband or shoulder strap that a martial artist might wear. But Black Belt, Cleanse Tag, and Spell Tag are all rare and valuable items. The Cleanse Tag and Spell Tag were highly sought-after mystical items created by mediums, shrine maidens, spirit channelers, and grave keepers. In areas abundant with ghost-type Pokémon or other eerie phenomena, as well as in locations densely populated with weak Pokémon, carrying a Cleanse Tag made it easier to avoid unwanted encounters. A similar item in the Sinnoh region was the Pure Incense, made from special herbs. It had a comparable effect to the Cleanse Tag and was also associated with the Pokémon Chimecho. In Hoenn, Chimecho was considered its final evolutionary form. However, in the distant Sinnoh region, researchers discovered its pre-evolution, Qingling. The key reason for this evolutionary discrepancy was that Chimecho needed to hold a pure incense when breeding, which would result in its offspring hatching as Qingling instead of another Chimecho. As for the Black Belt, it was typically just a standard martial artist's belt. However, the store's description stated that it could enhance fighting-type moves. But why is it red if it's called a Black Belt? It looks like leftover material from making focus sashes. The description states that this talisman can dispel any curse affecting the user once, but it will be consumed upon use. A spell tag that can actually inflict curses isn't surprising. Focus Sash prevents a Pokémon from being knocked out in one hit. Even against a disadvantageous matchup, it allows them to keep fighting. These effects seem slightly different from the ones I've seen before. Could this craftsman be a powerful medium? Professor Solon scrolled further and discovered another item at the bottom of the shop's listings, an item called tattered cloth. Although the accompanying photo just showed an ordinary-looking scrap of fabric, even he could sense something eerie about it. Could this be the Reaper cloth used for evolution? The three professors continued exchanging their observations, analyzing the unique properties of these items. Finally, Professor Elm proposed, "I'll buy a few of these, then have them analyzed by experts in the relevant fields." Chapter 34. In our Johto region, the Ecruteak City gym leader, Morty, is a well-known psychic. He possesses a unique ability called clairvoyance, allowing him to see things others cannot. Moreover, he is responsible for guarding the Bell Tower and the Burn Tower, places where legendary Pokémon are said to reside. If we ask him to conduct an experiment, he would certainly be able to provide an accurate conclusion. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in psychic abilities, so I can't participate in this matter. Professor Elm scratched his head, showing an apologetic expression, while Professor Oak waved his hand dismissively. No, artisan crafted items are not within our field of research. Whether it's you, me, or Professor Solons, our focus is different. These are areas of study for craftsmen and technology companies. Each region's professor specializes in different fields. Professor Oak's research focuses on the relationship between Pokémon and humans, encompassing Pokémon behavior, ecology, ethics, and elemental attributes. Other professors have their own areas of expertise and generally lack interest in supernatural matters. Professor Elm specializes in Pokémon breeding, while Professor Solons, although interested in rocks, primarily studies meteorites, astronomy, and energy. However, Professor Oak suddenly changed the topic. But just like evolution stones, rare materials we have never seen before may exist in distant regions. These aren't limited to stones but could also involve materials related to Pokémon. For example, we recently discovered evolution stones. Although they are naturally occurring minerals, they have a strong connection to Pokémon evolution. Perhaps such special stones exist in our region as well, but no one has discovered them yet. Why don't we pay closer attention to that peculiar shop? There's a chance it might offer rare materials that could aid our research. Professor Oak's suggestion was well received, and even Professor Solons mentioned that a certain member of the Hone Elite Four might be interested in these charms. After the video call ended, Professor Oak glanced at the unique charm in the shop and slowly recalled a familiar person. Kanto also has experts in ghost-type Pokémon, though his relationship with one of them isn't great. Should he invite her to the research lab? No, better not. If he asks for help with research, he will surely be scolded. By the time Steven arrived in Autumn Leaf Town, Professor Solon's cross-regional discussion meeting had already ended. Oh. Steven, you're here. I'm really sorry for making you travel so far. Not at all. Especially since we're talking about a rare stone. Steven didn't waste time on pleasantries and immediately asked, "So, Professor, where is the stone? How would the stone be here?" "It's still in Johto." Professor Solons laughed helplessly before explaining the discussion they had earlier. Upon learning that the stone came from an uncommon region, Steven couldn't hide his excitement. He hadn't even finished uncovering all the secrets buried deep underground in familiar regions, and now, an unknown place was presenting him with even more surprises. Their in-person discussion was far more detailed than the video call. Steven learned that the stone was currently in the hands of a Johto gym leader, and he had heard of Bugsy before. He's the youngest gym leader in Johto, right? I've heard he has remarkable expertise in bug-type Pokémon and even discovered the move Fury Cutter, distinguishing it from ordinary slashing moves. I see. But since the stone was sold to him, Steven fell into thought. If it were simply a matter of purchasing it, he certainly had the financial means. By offering a reasonable price, he was confident Bugsy would be willing to part with it. However, doing so might give people the impression that he just throws money around whenever he sees a rare treasure. The proper approach would be to locate the craftsman who made it. Besides, if Bugsy found it useful and didn't want to part with it, it would be an awkward situation. If this stone has a connection to Pokémon, then it isn't just a common geological rock but a special mineral formed under unique conditions. Steven explained fluently, "We already know about special minerals related to Pokémon, like Hardstone, Mystic Water, and the King's Rock. All of these have strong ties to Pokémon, and their formation in nature is often linked to rock, water, or psychic-type Pokémon. As a professional gemstone collector, Stephen's home in Moss Deep City displayed rocks from various regions, such as amphibolite from Kanto's rock tunnel, flint from Hone's MT Pyre, and diabase tuff from Sinoa's MT coronet. Thus, he had a keen eye for identifying which stones were unusual and which required specific environmental conditions to form. I was planning to visit Pewter City in Kanto soon. I heard the Science Museum there has discovered rare fossils. But now, it looks like I'll need to make a quick stop in Johto first. Stephen spread his hands. Time is really tight, so I plan to visit Johto for a quick look before heading to Pewter City. Once my research there is finished, I'll track down that craftsman. In that case, why not keep an eye on his shop? Professor Solans pulled up the store's website on his computer. It's one of the popular online shops, and it has some rather unique items. There are some charm-related items that Phoebe from the Elite Four might be interested in. Stephen browsed through the shop's listings. When he saw items that could boost move power and had ties to life energy like special charms and spectral cloth, he began contemplating. This craftsman seems to sell all sorts of things. Are his descriptions trustworthy? I'll send him an email to confirm. That would make it more official. After some thought, Stephen drafted a message at Professor Solon's research lab and sent it to the shop owner, Glow Moss. He quickly received a response. Sorry, I am currently unavailable. Please contact me later. Auto reply. It's an automated response. Well, that makes sense. The craftsman is probably out gathering rare materials. Stephen imagined the scene in his mind. Since he couldn't get an immediate answer, he decided to keep an eye on Glowmoss shop for updates. At the same time, he and Professor Solans discussed whether evolution stones might be a new type of meteorite. Meanwhile, he also sent Phoebe a message, I've found something interesting. June 19th. After the dream event ended, Hikaru busied himself with planting and watering, refraining from further interaction with the symbolic slate. Meanwhile, the term walking wake had also been split apart. During this period, Hikaru utilized the ability of the Leaf Gatherer Traveler and picked up 2 herbs. Both were white herbs. When held by a Pokémon, it can restore any lowered stats once. Hikaru also drafted a travel plan to close his shop for a while between August and September and leave the Johto region. His first destination would be Unova. The Entralink. I'm gradually getting a feeling that it must be there. I need to visit Unova, but not right now. Since the information hinted at an encounter, then surely, they would meet again. Meanwhile, the evolved Hunch had not been idle either. Aside from continuing to help clear branches and gather wood, it also trained extensively in Substitute and Reflect, occasionally mixing in Fury Cutter. Previously, it had boasted that a weapon had no need for defense. Now, it had completely changed its stance, talking about a knight's virtue and such. But to Hikaru, this thing was simply brimming with an insatiable desire for victory. A knight? Hardly. Hopefully, it wouldn't end up cancelling Fury Cutter altogether. This really seemed like some kind of awakened memory from a past life. However, ever since it evolved into Dao Blade, both swords insisted that they were the original and that the other was the counterfeit. They constantly accused each other of imitation and demanded that the other stop copying their sword techniques. Honestly, Hikaru had always wondered, would Pokémon like Dao Blade ever develop dissociative identity disorder? Now, it seemed that there were already some signs of it. If I can find a Dusk Stone, I can evolve Dao Blade into Aegislash right away, and this whole issue with split consciousness should resolve itself. That was Hikaru's thought process, but as for finding a Dusk Stone, there were no leads. Should he just rely on random field exploration? Additionally, a small incident took place. Petalil, Hunch turned into 2, which one is the original? ... Asterisk. Left sword, I am the real one. I was Hunch. Right sword, I am the real one. He's just the split off. Due to Petalil's innocent curiosity, the 2 swords immediately began fighting each other. Hikaru had to step in quickly to prevent Dao Blade from literally battling itself. Petalil, though still curious, realized that asking further would only make things worse. It quickly darted off into the herb field, dug a small hole, and buried itself in it. Taking care of Pokémon is a real skill. Pokémon breeding is such an important aspect of their world. I wonder if psychological issues could arise. With this in mind, Hikaru paid extra attention to Dao Blade. Later that day, just before working on processing stones, Hikaru noticed an unread email in his inbox. A wild new customer. However, the inquiry was about purchasing an evolutionary stone. Could this be from someone Bugsy referred? Looks like he's already used that stone. While contemplating, Hikaru responded to the email. First and foremost, he informed the customer that evolutionary stones were rare and not something easily obtained. At the moment, he did not have a second one available. Even if he did, he wouldn't sell it right away. He planned to have Hunchno, Dao Blade hold onto it for a while. After giving it some thought, Hikaru added. Evolutionary stones can potentially be found in various regions. You may try searching in local caves or mountainous areas. If there is a significant gathering of Pokémon, there's a chance you might find such stones. In Hone, there was indeed an evolutionary stone. However, in the games, that particular stone was not located in any terrain but rather in the possession of a fisherman near the water, who had given it to a Magikarp to hold. In the games, there was only one way to obtain a wild evolutionary stone. Not by purchasing from a store. Not through mechanical synthesis. Instead, in Pokémon X/Y, one could find it inside a trash can in the Pokémon village, where wild Pokémon gathered. Similarly, in Shalar City of the Kalos region, another could be obtained after discovering a certain number of Pokémon. After sending his reply, Hikaru checked his shop and noticed a slight increase in followers. Additionally, a few orders had been placed for a cleanse tag and some spell tags. Chapter 35. People are actually buying spell tags? I only listed them to fill out my inventory. Their spiritual power is pretty ordinary, and they shouldn't be of much use to true psychics. Initially, Hikaru believed that these tags would sell well, but after reconsidering, he realized that true psychics likely had access to much higher quality materials. His own spell tags were rather average, perhaps not even worth their attention. Yet, to his surprise, some had sold. The shipping would once again be handled through Blackthorn City, and the Charizard would likely be the one picking up the orders. The destinations included Ripple Town in Unova, Ekrutique City in Johto, Pallet Town in Kanto, and MT Pyre in Hone? Hey, another order from Hone? Another customer from a far-off region. But wait, MT Pyre? That place isn't exactly a mailing address. It's a sacred site where the spirits of deceased Pokémon are laid to rest. Do they even have a postal service there? Without a Pokémon Center, receiving deliveries would be impossible. Hikaru hesitated. Normally, cross-regional shipping wasn't supposed to be free, but since he had no existing customers in Hone, this wild client, whoever they were, was a great opportunity. He couldn't pass it up. Fine, free shipping it is. Consider it an investment in expanding his market. Just like when he offered free shipping for that Unova customer last time. MT Pyre was run by an elderly couple, whom Hikaru recalled were the grandparents of Phoebe, one of Hone's Elite Four. Could it be that Phoebe bought these charms? Or perhaps it was another psychic. Many psychics and mediums trained atop MT Pyre, after all. Hikaru quickly processed the orders and waited for Charizard to pick them up. However, for the Hone order, he opted for express delivery. He wanted to leave a good impression on this new customer. Since it was express shipping, Charizard likely wouldn't be the one handling it. Instead, it might be a Dragonite that would transport the package to Olivine City, where it would then be shipped overseas to Hone. Compared to Unova, Hone was much closer to Johto. In the northwest region of Johto, there were ruins left behind by ancient Hone settlers. They had built the Burial Tower, a site dedicated to the worship of Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza. The actual shipping destination couldn't be MT Pyre itself, of course. Instead, it would be sent to the nearest cities, either Slateport City or Lily Cove City. Hikaru made a note of this and sent an email to inform the client. Then, he stepped away from the computer and started his work for the day. The entire day was spent crafting. The stones gathered while clearing land had finally found a use through ancient sculpting techniques. He could create artifacts to sell. These newly crafted faux antique artifacts looked and even felt entirely authentic. If Hikaru didn't label them as replicas, most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Of course, for them to be considered antiques, they needed to be embedded with relic fragments. Fortunately, he had saved half a piece. He had Dao Blade cut it in half, one portion for future use and the other split into even smaller fragments. In truth, ancient sculptures could also be made using old stone, but Hikaru still had no idea where to source that material. Meanwhile, Dao Blade took this opportunity to train its stone-cutting technique. Now that it had learned brick break, it could finally smash these damned stones properly. Forget rock smash. Who needs rock smash? And unexpectedly, since Dao Blade had 2 swords now, its efficiency had increased not just because there were 2 blades, but also because both minds were competing with each other. Each one wanted to prove it was the real Dao Blade through superior stone carving skills. Yup. At this point, Hikaru could only sigh as he watched the 2 swords fight each other again. In the soft soil, berries had also been planted. Just like the flower shop girl in Hone had once said in the games, berry cultivation is incredibly simple, just bury a seed, or even the whole fruit, and the plant will grow on its own. They sprout quickly, too. Not to mention that Petalil was there to take care of them. However, some materials were starting to run out. One such material was curly fern, a type of throwable item used in crafting. Its curled, spiral-shaped leaves could be unrolled to form natural packaging paper. But neither the village nor the wanderer had any. Curly fern was one of the ingredients needed to make sticky glob. If that were the only missing ingredient, other ferns could serve as substitutes. But sticky glob also required mud balls and hollow acorns. Mud balls were simply hardened clumps of dirt easy to obtain. However, hollow acorns were naturally hollowed out acorns with their insides eaten away, making them distinct from normal berries. Acorns were used to craft pokeballs, and while they were scattered throughout Johto, they were still relatively rare. In this ancient land, they were even harder to find. In Johto, there was a pokeball craftsman, Kurt, whose backyard was home to a whole forest of acorn trees. The only acorn I have is the one Petalil brought me, a white acorn. This basically confirmed that Petalil's habitat contained acorn trees. But venturing into the Shinto forest would require thorough preparation, and he wouldn't be able to explore too deeply. At the same time, Hikaru pondered the mystery of the 3 crystallized fragments. The walking wake crystal had somehow been carried out of the dream world, but the other 2 had more mysterious origins. The brilliant crystal was described as a manifestation of Terra energy, which Hikaru recognized it was the Terra Raid Dens from Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, clusters of massive, pillar-like crystals. Those could only be found in Paldea and at the mountaintop lakes of Kitakami. As for the ancient crystal, it was tied to the Regi trio Regirock, Regis, and Registeel. Hikaru knew of it existed in the Pokémon trading card game. It was depicted as a square, semi-transparent, ancient-looking crystal engraved with mysterious patterns, and its effects were closely linked to the 3 Regis. Perhaps this crystal was the very source of the Regi trio's clear body ability. If that were the case, then could this ancient crystal be used to craft a purity pendant? A clear bell, a purity pendant. There are quite a few items that could be crafted from these crystals. Hikaru spent the entire day carving, producing a number of artifacts. As the crafting process concluded, information about the artifacts appeared for identification. You have completed an artisan craft. Artifact: small ancient statue, Shinto ruins style. Description: a statue carved in an ancient style, modeled after a Snorlax. It boasts incredibly realistic craftsmanship and a deceptive antique finish, with its sculpting style said to originate from the ancient Shinto ruins. Due to the embedded relic fragment, it has become an inexplicable artifact. Collectors may pay a high price for it. Artifact effect: calmness slightly soothes external forces and calms the mind. Knowledge gained, +1. Ancient sculptor: your crafted items exude an ancient aura, enhancing your carving skill by +25%. Different ancient artifacts possess unique effects, varying based on craftsmanship and artistic style. Shortly after, new clues about a rare material surfaced. Material clue: rare material, sturdy ore. Location: near the ancient Spirit Peak foothills, unnamed plateau in the northwest, southwestern quartz plateau caves, mountain paths, Shinto forest, rocky ruins, outer unnamed forests, southern forests, eastern hillside woodlands. Associated craft: lore food crafting. Sturdy ore, Hui. While not classified as rare, it was certainly useful. If he couldn't find a source, he'd have to buy it from the wanderer. This ore was beneficial to the body, essentially rock salt. Now that Hikaru had pinpointed its gathering locations, he nodded in satisfaction. As for the statue's design, Hikaru chose Snorlax over the more traditional Radon. Why? Because everyone used Radon statues. Ancient people used them, modern people placed them at gym entrances, and they were everywhere. If his sculptures weren't unique, why would anyone be interested? Also, Snorlax was much easier to carve than Radon. Maybe, once his sculpting skills improved, he could try making figures of human characters, turning them into collectible stone figurines. Those would surely sell far better than ordinary stone carvings. For example, if I got official approval, I could make figurines of champions from different regions. Those would be a guaranteed hit. No, wait, there's no way I'd get that kind of approval. Hikaru shook his head. To get that kind of official licensing, he'd need connections with champions, something far beyond his reach for now. But, what if he sculpted Arceus instead? Volo would definitely become a big customer. Right, I promised to craft some artifacts for him last time. Might as well make a few Arceus statues. Time passed, and night fell. Hikaru finished his first Arceus statue, infused with a profound ancient aura. For some reason, he felt that this Arceus sculpture radiated an even stronger antique presence than the Snorlax one. Is it because Arceus' image is inherently tied to ancient mythology? Artifact, small classical ancient statue, premium, Shinto ruins style. Description, a premium sculpture carved in an ancient style, modeled after Arceus, the legendary creator deity of Sinnoh. As it represents myth itself, this statue's antique essence has been elevated, making it highly coveted by collectors willing to pay a fortune. Artifact Effect 1, Powerful Insight, once per Pokémon, a faint echo of Shinto's ancient music can be heard from the sculpture. When a Pokémon listens to it, they may randomly learn a powerful move that is normally only accessible after evolution. The stronger the Pokémon before evolving, the stronger the move learned. Artifact Effect 2, Radiant Birth. Under the influence of this sculpture, Pokémon hatched from eggs will be born with enhanced potential, and there is a chance for them to hatch/shiny encounter a Pokémon of a different color. Mysterious Inscription, the life born from an egg will one day perish, only to be reborn anew. This quote. It's from the ancient Johto legends about eggs. And, different colors. Hikaru muttered before suddenly realizing something. This was a shiny farming tool? Chapter 36. Hikaru turned his gaze to the Arceus sculpture he had carved. The Arceus sculpture could allow a Pokémon to learn a powerful move that it could only acquire after evolution. From a competitive standpoint, this was illegal. But in reality, it didn't matter at all. However, Hikaru did not immediately take out the Arceus figurine. Instead, after some thought, he selected a high-quality piece of stone and began carving a new sculpture, this time, of Petilil. Not only did he plan to create a stone sculpture, but he also wanted to make a wooden one. Hikaru wanted to see if there were any differences between the stone and wooden sculptures. Wood carving? Hey! Although he wanted Petilil to participate in the carving process, in reality, it didn't have any moves that could be used for carving. Even its body lacked the necessary features. It had neither sharp claws nor sturdy blades. Similarly, in battles, Petilil was not a common choice for combat. Pure grass-type Pokémon had poor offensive coverage, numerous weaknesses, and a very limited move pool. No matter how one looked at it, Petilil wasn't considered a strong battling Pokémon. So, instead, she could focus on taking care of medicinal herbs and farmland, gaining improvements through cultivation and planting, breaking free from the frail label. And if she could obtain a Sunstone and was lucky enough to evolve into Hisuian Lilligant, then everything would turn around. Time passed second by second as Hikaru continued carving. His movements became more refined, and his carving speed also increased. Hikaru was already highly skilled in sculpture, and with bonuses from both ancient sculpture and relic carving techniques, crafting these small stone statues was an effortless task. Of course, Petilil's design was relatively simple compared to Hunch and Dao Blade. There were fewer intricate patterns and hollowed-out sections to deal with. Before long, the carving was complete. Artifact, small ancient stone statue, Shinto ruins style. Description, a stone statue carved in an ancient style, depicting Petilil. Some collectors may be willing to pay a high price for it. Effect, vitality. The sculpture promotes the growth of nearby grass and plants, allowing withered and decayed trees to sprout anew. This was the effect of the stone sculpture. Hikaru nodded in approval. A revitalizing effect, bringing dead wood back to life. It was certainly useful for trainers who favored grass-type Pokémon, as it could help cultivate gardens, grasslands, and forests. Of course, it was beneficial for himself as well. However, for Petilil, this effect didn't provide much direct benefit. Next, Hikaru began carving the wooden sculpture. Wood carving differed from stone carving in terms of technique, but it was also a family craft passed down to Hikaru. Compared to stone carving, he found wood carving easier and more convenient. However, He hadn't done any logging recently, and most of the wood stored at home consisted of tree branches he had previously gathered. So, after searching the storage area for a while, he retrieved some old wooden materials that had been preserved. Maybe old wood will even provide an extra bonus for carving. Hikaru thought. Then, he began carving. After a long period of focused work, he finally completed a lifelike wooden sculpture. Artifact: small ancient wooden carving Shinto ruins style. Description: a wooden sculpture carved in the ancient style, depicting Petalil. Embedded with fragments of ruins, making it a valuable collector's item. Effect: prayer. When a Pokémon prays to the wooden sculpture, it will respond and bestow a power upon that Pokémon. Oh! It's different. Unlike the stone carving, the wooden one was labeled ancient rather than ancient style. Bestowal of power through prayer? The effect seemed vague, but if it only responded to a specific Pokémon. Let's test it out. That day, training outside continued as usual. It had been raining for 2 days, starting as a drizzle, turning into a downpour, and then subsiding back into a light rain. Dowblade had high expectations for Petalil's potential, and she had been persistently training. As the rain gradually weakened and the clouds in the sky began to break apart, revealing patches of blue, their battle finally came to an end. Lily. Petalil felt something strange. Training in this area seemed to improve her stamina and energy more quickly. That was why she had been drawn to this land in her weakened state. Meanwhile, Dowblade twirled proudly in the air, its 2 swords dancing as if celebrating. It acknowledged that Hikaru was a remarkable person, someone capable of crafting objects with mystical abilities and possessing knowledge others did not. However, the fertility of this land was also thanks to Dugtrio and Diglett. Only at moments like these would the 2 blades of Dowblade stop fighting each other, for they both agreed on Hikaru's brilliance. Duhu, agreed. This land thrived thanks to everyone's joint efforts. Creak. The door to the cabin opened, and Hikaru stepped out, carefully carrying the wooden carving. He walked to the slightly muddy medicinal field and placed the sculpture on the ground. Lily. Petalil tilted her head. The wooden sculpture was an exact replica of herself. But why was Hikaru placing it here? Do you desire power? Hikaru didn't know how to phrase it properly, so he simply asked, "This is a sculpture I just made. Its effect, well, if you have a wish, you can pray to it and see what happens." Lily. It was a strange request, but out of curiosity, Petalil decided to try. Her wish was simple: to defeat the Hisuian quillfish and reclaim her home, growing stronger in the process. As she prayed, the wooden carving began to emit a faint glow. Under the sunlight, the light appeared even more dazzling. Wow! Oh, oh! Petalil was stunned by the sight, taking 2 steps back in shock. The next moment, as if responding to her prayer, the carving radiated light that enveloped her. Duhu! Duhu! Dowblade was also surprised. The eyes on both blades widened as they tried to comprehend what was happening. A massive amount of sunlight gathered, forming a glowing veil reminiscent of the sun itself, which then enveloped the wooden sculpture. The intense light was so strong that Petalil could barely keep her eyes open. Hikaru narrowed his eyes slightly. The sunlight was intense but not blinding, mainly because the wooden sculpture wasn't facing directly toward him. However, even he hadn't expected this outcome. At that moment, information about the carving suddenly appeared in his mind. The ancient wooden carving has responded to the Pokémon's wish and bestowed it with power. Bestowed power, Petalil's attack IVs have been maximized. Chapter 37. With the first display of power, the subsequent information gradually emerged, completing the unclear details of the craftsmanship effect. Ancient wooden carvings will respond to the corresponding Pokémon image, and each type of wooden carving can only be wished upon once. If the craftsmanship of the wooden carving improves and unique wood is used, the number of wishes or the content of the wish may also change. The purpose of the ancient wooden carvings is to enhance individual values. Hikaru was somewhat surprised, but when he recalled that these carvings also required the embedding of ruined stones or ancient rocks, his excitement quickly faded. As everyone knows, Pokémon have 3 sets of data: base stats, individual values, IVs, and effort values, EVs. Even in the real Pokémon world, effort values can be considered limitless. After all, if a Pokémon trains harder, no one can dispute it. However, base stats and individual values cannot be changed. The former represents a Pokémon species' fixed stat potential, while the latter reflects an individual Pokémon's inherent strengths and weaknesses, which are unchangeable. Among players, the number 31 is commonly referred to as V, which signifies the highest possible individual value. In the entire Pokémon world, the only way to increase a Pokémon's individual values is through hyper-training, which requires silver or gold bottle caps as resources. Wait a minute, did it only boost attack 4? Hikaru's initial excitement quickly dissipated. He then realized that after Petilil made a wish, the only 4 that improved was attack. This made Hikaru feel both amused and frustrated. Pokémon have a very simple understanding of power. It all comes down to attack. Most Pokémon cannot distinguish between physical attack and special attack. Of course, there are exceptions, such as Jessie and James Wobbuffet, which adjusts its defenses based on the attack type it faces. Looks like I need to find some unique wood and carve more wooden sculptures. Old wood allows only 1 wish per Pokémon species. Even if I carve a new sculpture, I can't make another wish for the same Pokémon unless I use a different type of wood. And since the first wish boosted attack 4, wouldn't it be better to aim for the Hisuian form instead? While Petilil's attack 4 reached its maximum, its base attack stat was still quite low. Only after evolving into Lilligant, Hisuian form, the Hisuian Queen of the Highlands, would it gain significant offensive power. Moreover, in terms of moves, abilities, and versatility, Hisuian Lilligant is undeniably stronger than its original Unnovan counterpart. That's right. If I want to reclaim its habitat, evolving into a powerful form is the way to go. As for abilities, I can use ability capsules to fix that. I may not have one right now, but there's no rush. Petilil. Seeing Hikaru's changing expression going from joy to a furrowed brow, Petilil didn't understand what was happening. However, she felt as if her strength had increased significantly. It was an amazing feeling. But when she tried touching the carving again, or even making another wish, the sculpture no longer responded. Petilil turned toward Hikaru. Petil. Did I make the wrong wish? She was confused. Now that the wish was over, the ancient energy inside the carving had been depleted. It was now nothing more than an ornament to sell for money. Maybe if I use special wood, the carvings could display even stronger effects, like wood from oak groves, evergrowth forest, or link forest. Hikaru glanced at Petilil. She and Dowblade were poking at the sculpture curiously. Right, Dowblade should also get a wish. But Dowblade's patterns are too intricate, and Hikaru didn't want to deal with that hassle. Before making a wish for Dowblade, he needed to figure out which stats were the most important and should be boosted first, and which ones were less critical. If I find a stronger type of special wood, could I increase 2 or 3 IVs at once? Maybe even max out all stats in one go. Hyper-training is a mechanic that only exists in the games. There's a good chance that hyper-training simply doesn't exist in the real-world Alola region. In that case, my wooden carvings function like hyper-training and silver bottle caps. If that were true, these carvings could sell for a lot of money. Although most trainers probably don't understand IVs, since even the Pokédex doesn't display them explicitly, there are some hidden clues in the world. For example, Ash's Infernape. When it was still a Chimchar, its Blaze ability exhibited an extreme level of power, which is why Paul saw its potential and caught it. It was highly likely that Ash's Chimchar had perfect attack and special attack IVs from a young age. A Pokémon with strong IVs and a powerful ability can display incredible strength, and when combined with unlimited effort the result is overwhelming power. Of course, reality doesn't work exactly like the games. Petil. Yup. Petilil and Doublade's voices snapped Hikaru out of his thoughts. Seeing their slightly anxious expressions, he quickly crouched down. Sorry, I just got lost in thought. Petil. Petilil asked if it was because of the wooden carving. The carving, well, it was an unexpected outcome. I'm not upset at all. In fact, I'm excited because you've become stronger. Hikaru patted her leafy head and encouraged her. You'll keep getting stronger, and you'll fulfill your own wishes. Of course, I also need rewards in this process. The stronger you become, the greater my returns. Let's work hard together. Petil. Wah. Omega. Petilil clenched the sides of her leaf-like skirt as if they were little fists. Her eyes burned with determination. Get stronger. Stronger. Amidst this rising determination, the leaves on Petilil's head began to glow. She recalled the dazzling sunlight that radiated from the carving moments ago. It seemed to awaken something deep within her. The sun above shone brightly. After rain comes sunshine, and the grass will grow stronger and lusher. Petil. Suddenly, Petalil cried out to the sky. Then a vast amount of sunlight gathered above her head. The intense light resembled a miniature sun or a glowing screen, recreating the moment when the sculpture had exhibited its power. The sunlight became stronger. This was the move Sunny Day. But it didn't stop there. The gathered sunlight continued condensing above Petalil's head, forming a scorching hot solar halo that surrounded her. Hikaru and Blade stepped back, watching in awe. The concentrated sunlight continued gathering, building up over time. And then, boom! A massive beam of light shot into the sky. Petalil had learned Solar Beam. Sunny Day and Solar Beam are a natural pair. For Pokémon who can master both moves, learning Sunny Day usually means they can also learn Solar Beam, but not necessarily the other way around. The 4 boost must have helped her tap into extraordinary power. But even though it increased her attack 4, she can still use special attack moves? Or was it just a matter of reaching a threshold? Long-term battles built up her effort values, and this fertile land must have helped too. Hikaru looked around at his herb field. It was the result of knowledge and sweat, along with a small push from an external tool. And the outcome? A great success. However, someone else had been watching. From the rooftop of the workshop, a small, green, winged Pokémon had appeared, fluttering its tiny wings. Around it, ripples of time flickered. She. The Pokémon giggled mischievously. This workshop seemed like a fun place. Chapter 38. June 24th. A few days ago, the rain arrived just in time. Now, the herb field and farmland are entirely covered in green, fresh sprouts greedily absorb the early summer warmth, growing sturdier by the day. And Petalil, who has learned Sunny Day, continues working in the fields. Her instincts as a grass-type Pokémon grant her some knowledge about caring for herbs and crops. These herbs and crops only require 10 days to a month before harvest, and on this land, they will be ready even sooner. From the workshop comes the sound of carving. Petalil knows that human is making more mysterious tools again. 2 days ago, after being strengthened, she felt brimming with energy. Now and then, she lifts the small hands on her skirt hem and fires off a hard brace attack at the grass ahead. Here, she feels extremely at ease, so much so that she might forget how to fight if she stays too long. At times, she's even considered living here instead of reclaiming her old habitat. But whenever that thought arises, she remembers the once timid companions she had and their leader. Their leader is a standard form Lilligant. Before this, Petalil also believed she would evolve into that form. But now, she knows she has another possible evolution, and she can't help feeling anticipation for her own future. If she reclaims their habitat and evolves into that other form, how would their leader see her? Would her companions be happy for the return of their home? Or would they have already taken root somewhere else, unwilling to come back? Petty. If she took back the habitat only for her companions not to return, everything she did would seem pointless. But Petalil has considered this scenario long ago. Even if she lives there alone as a single Pokémon. Her former companions may have left, but Pokémon are communal creatures, and many also migrate. Surely, eventually, other Petalil would arrive, settling once more in that old homeland. With that in mind, Petalil fixes her gaze on the distant forest. Beyond those rolling hills, rocks, and woodlands lies the outer forest that directly connects to the Shendu ancient forest. Perhaps the leader, too, had come from another place before migrating to this forest. That could explain why her form differs from the other form humans speak of. Her appearance is considered normal, while only in harsh conditions can one evolve into the new form. To the leader, moving from one piece of land to another may be entirely normal. She might not understand why Petalil clings so hard to that one patch of land, for rich, fertile soil can be found anywhere. And likely the other Petalil thought the same. Petty. But I was born in that habitat. Petalil withdraws her gaze from the forest and devotes herself fully to tending each crop. In the soft soil, berries have sprouted as well. These astonishing berry trees are a unique feature of this world. They drop their berries to the ground, the berries decay, and soon new sprouts appear. Unlike ordinary trees, they don't have a long growth cycle, though these berry trees here still seem to be growing rather quickly. Petalil arrives at the patch where the berries are planted. By color alone, it's clear this soil differs slightly from the rest. Though all the soil is soft, this patch appears to have been tilled multiple times. She heard it was thanks to a group of Diglett and Dugtrio from far away. That's the power of a collective, not just a single Pokémon. A group of companions. Petalil's gaze drifts toward the workshop. The carving sound continues, over and over. Roar. Suddenly, a distant roar echoes from the sky. Petalil bounces up and looks overhead, spotting a massive black dot beneath the white clouds. The dot rapidly closes in, scattering the surrounding clouds. Its outline gradually becomes distinct. It's a huge Pokémon. The shape descends at high speed. Initially, Petalil panics. She gathers sunlight, assuming it to be a wild intruder. However, just as her solar beam is about to fire, she realizes the Pokémon diving down from the sky is carrying a human's delivery box on its body. Hey! Seeing the bright sunlight, the descending Pokémon also changes course and soars straight toward Petalil's area, landing with tremendous force at the edge of the field. Hearing the commotion, Hikaru and Dowblade emerge from the wooden house. A Charizard from Blackthorn City. Indeed, the courier this time is Charizard again. Carrying a large box on its chest, it's arrived one day earlier than expected. Because it had come here before, the route was familiar, so it flew faster. Charizard glances at Petalil, intrigued for a moment. It's never seen this type of Pokémon before but quickly looks away. Letting out a few growls, it mimics what it did last time, pulling a rage candy bar from the box and chomping away. Then Charizard begins to unload various items, a large supply of fertilizer, plus crystallized honey. Growth mulch, speeds up the soil's drying but also accelerates berry growth in soft soil. Damp mulch, slows the soil's drying but also slows berry growth in soft soil. Stable mulch, extends the time before berries drop. Gooey mulch, increases the number of times new sprouts appear after the plant wilts. These fertilizers were originally intended for berry cultivation, so besides them, there's also regular fertilizer for herbs and crops. Crystallized honey glimmers with an amber glow. Bug-type and fairy-type Pokémon love it, it can attract them to wherever it's placed. Produced by Combi, it's not exactly rare. If any honey is truly rare, it's the terrifying sweet honey produced by Vespican. Roar. Charizard scratches its head, indicating these fertilizers and honey were quite heavy, so it took longer to fly here than last time. Thank you so much. This place really is out in the boonies. Hikaru smiles and places the packed parcels into the box. There's one to Pallet Town, one to Ekrutique City, and one bound for the Hone region. Charizard looks over the parcels. When it notices the one for Hone, its expression changes a bit, letting out a series of growls. Dowblade translates promptly. Charizard is saying your workshop looks so rundown it never expected you'd be doing business all the way in Hone. Yeah, it's pretty dilapidated. I never bother to fix it up, as long as it doesn't leak when it rains. Hikaru feels a bit embarrassed. How could his ramshackle workshop compare to a Pokémon Center? Roar, roar. With its claws at its hips, Charizard seems to be complaining. Shipments to Hone must be transferred through Kianwood City. It's not fast enough otherwise, it could deliver directly to Kianwood without returning to Blackthorn City. Not fast enough? Hikaru recalls Charizard's base speed stat is about 100. That's already quite fast. Charizard, roar. Johto's main courier for urgent deliveries of all sizes is Dragonite. Suddenly Hikaru understands. Oh, that Dragonite with a base speed of only 80, but it has extreme speed, no wonder Charizard can't compete. Simultaneously, Charizard explains that in snowy mountain regions, it's the one handling deliveries since it isn't a dragon type and thus not weak to ice. As for rainy weather, one sunny day solves the problem, no big deal. On foggy days, it can use defog. In short, it can handle a wider range of climates than Dragonite, which can't deal with icy conditions. Is that so? Then take this. Hikaru pulls out a wooden carving shaped like Charizard. Roar. Charizard looks puzzled. Is this just some normal craft? No, once you go back, pray to it. It'll show you the power you long for. Aren't you wishing for more speed? Indeed, you can still be faster. I'm a tool maker who sells items with unusual abilities. If you don't mind, give it a try. Hikaru explains with a smile. After all, you might be picking up and dropping off parcels here often. If you can fly faster, that helps me too. When long-term effort is finally recognized by one's own potential, it can burst forth with astounding power. Charizard, still somewhat unsure, accepts the carving. It gives a friendlier roar to Hikaru, indicating that if it ever finds anything neat on its route, it will bring it by next time. Your relationship with Charizard has improved. Flapping its wings, Charizard takes off, performing a mysterious dance in midair, evidently dragon dance, to increase its speed. Then, it vanishes into the distant sky. I guess you could call that a sort of sales pitch, Hikaru mutters. Petilil also watches as Charizard flies away. Powerful Pokémon can cross mountains and rivers to reach such faraway places. If she evolves, could she travel just like that? Yo! Suddenly, Dowblade floats over to Petilil. She tilts her head in confusion, while the two red sashes on Dowblade sway side to side, both eyes expressing a hint of exasperation. Yo! No, that Charizard wasn't traveling for fun. It was working a delivery job. If it goes overtime, it might lose out on its snacks. Wah wah! Petty! All of a sudden, Petilil seems to sense something. She glances around quickly. Just a moment ago, when she looked up, she thought she saw a shadow flicker in her peripheral vision. Petty! Petilil cocks her head. Was that a mistake? What's wrong? Hikaru notices Petilil looking distracted. Petilil hops over and says she just saw a strange shadow. A strange shadow? It's daytime, so a ghost-type Pokémon shouldn't be out. Hikaru rubs his chin, turning to Dowblade for translation. Did either of you notice anything? You. Yoab. Both of Dowblade's eyes reveal puzzled expressions. Seeing that, Hikaru instantly understands. Figures I can't really count on a Pokémon with a careless personality to have super sharp observation skills. Maybe it was a leaf or some weed blowing over from the woods. Perfectly normal. Or maybe, because we created the symbolic tablet, we attracted some unknown. I hear unknown like spying on people. In any case, don't overthink it. If it really is an unknown, there's no malice. Hikaru holds up his index finger, giving both Pokémon a little explanation about unknown, which are just like the characters on the stone tablet. Petty. Petilil once again looks around. Was it really just her imagination? Or was it unknown? If it's a friend, why not show itself? By this time, Hikaru has entered the cabin. Petilil remains in the field a moment longer, then follows him inside. Outside, by the workshop window, that winged, green Pokémon appears once again, giggling quietly. But it only laughs for a moment before it notices Unknown there. Their three gazes meet, and Unknown makes an awkward sound. Unknown. Haha, what a coincidence you're spying on them too, hey. Chapter 39. Next week Event 4, Warhammer, starting as a planetary governor. 200 PS equals +1 extra chapter. New stock has arrived. After Charizard left, Hikaru more or less finished his tasks for the day. He produced several additional carvings, mostly stone sculptures, with fewer wooden ones. But for the newly listed wooden carvings, he added a note offering custom orders. Then he took photos, uploaded them to his store, and added the new products. Hikaru designs these sculptures based on the Pokémon he's encountered or those belonging to his customers, though he also introduces new items. Those he's encountered or that his customers represent include Charizard, Charmander, Dragonite, Scyther, Gengar, and Zaytu. New items are Slugma, Laren, and Dratini. Together with the previously made Snorlax, these sculptures are up for sale. Hikaru plans to watch which pieces sell well. If something does well, he'll make more. If it doesn't move, he'll stop producing it and develop new designs instead. Of course, he won't forget to list the Arceus sculpture, though presumably hardly anyone knows that Pokémon. There are 3 stone versions in total and 1 wooden version. Additionally, regardless of whether the sculpture is of an evolved or unevolved Pokémon, if the carving style, materials, and technique remain the same, the resulting effects are somewhat similar. He noticed this pattern from the Charmander and Charizard statues. Handicraft, small ancient statue Shinto ruins style. Description: a statue carved in an ancient style, modeled after Charmander. Some collectors may pay a high price. Effect: warm air. The surrounding air becomes noticeably warmer. Meanwhile, the Charizard version has the following effect. Effect: burning flames burn more vigorously. Hikaru hasn't forgotten Dowblade either. Although the patterns on Dowblade's scabbards are a bit tricky, the finished product looks quite nice. First, he made a stone carving, placing it beside Petilil's sculpture. He purposely gave it a sword in the stone design by adding a rock base into which swords could be inserted. Because Dowblade consists of 2 blades, he set them diagonally so they form an X. Handicraft, small ancient statue Shinto ruins style. Description, a statue carved in an ancient style, modeled after Dao blade. Some collectors may pay a high price. Effect, harvesting nearby chopping/cutting/gathering efficiency plus 10%. Oh, so it's a carving for chopping wood or splitting logs. If used together with Petalil's statue, maybe you get a rapid growth timberland. It can also be used for cutting stone or trimming cloth, an excellent work support statue. It now seems that ancient bracelets are for teaching Pokémon moves, whereas these ancient statues offer various small buffs. As for the ancient jar and ancient crown, Hikaru still isn't sure what abilities they might have. In the games, the items linked to crowns and jars include things like King's Rock and Dire Hit's Urn. But many King's Rocks are naturally occurring stones, not forged. Though examples of man-made ones do exist. And silver crowns or gold crowns look more like bottle caps with a crown motif. Hey, maybe a forged ancient crown would turn out to be the crown Tundra's Calyrex's head or something. Next is the wooden carving. Handicraft, small ancient wood carving Shinto ruins style. Description, a sculpture carved in an ancient style, modeled after Dao blade. Some collectors may pay a high price. Effect, wish-making. By repeating certain tasks, you have gained new knowledge. Carving expert, plus 20% to carving efficiency and technique. Hikaru hands the ancient wood carving to Dao blade. Alright, pray to the carving. It will show you power. But it's best not to pray for extra speed. Even when you evolve fully, your inherent speed won't be all that high. In terms of first priorities, whether attacking first or overall mobility speed isn't what you need right now. Dao blade seems rather confused. Swords, after all, are usually most effective at higher speeds, right? You swing, and before the opponent notices, you've struck them down. Plus, it can use lighten body to greatly increase speed, and now it has 2 blades. If it maximizes that speed. Yoab? U? X. So why not pick speed? Hikaru listens to Doublade's protest, and his mind drifts to Ash's Torterra. The so-called Fall Guy tortoise. But personally, Hikaru kind of wants to capture a Torterra himself one day. Ash's Torterra was really fast before it evolved, focusing all its strengths on speed. But after reaching its final form, it became heavy and had to expend extra energy for top speed movement, leading to a big stamina drain. In real-time battles, a Pokémon's stamina is something you can't ignore. Even if HP remains, dwindling stamina reduces both offense and defense by a lot. That Torterra had relied on speed moves since its Turtwig days, neglecting defensive training, so once it evolved, its weak defense became glaringly obvious. Whenever it took a direct hit, it couldn't handle it. However, at that time, Ash didn't have a tool like loaded dice available. In later eras, Torterra could learn Shell Smash, enabling an aggressive speed-based approach. Pairing Shell Smash and loaded dice and Bullet Seed and Headlong Rush, the Torterra could fully abandon defense, adopt a do-or-die style, and rapidly defeat its opponent. For Doublade's final evolution, Aegislash, it's usually best to attack after the opponent. You rely on high endurance in shield form to tank a hit, then switch to blade form to strike back. If you act first, you'll shift straight into blade form and get hammered. Though real-time battles aren't turn-based, its ability, stance change, and the related stat differences still apply. Blade form is extremely fragile, but don't worry, defense is handled by the priority plus 4 move King's Shield. Once Hikaru obtains more rare wood in the future, raising Doublade's speed 4 might not be a bad idea. In realistic terms, it's like giving up your natural talents to work on what you're weak at, which yields half the results for double the effort. We need to fully tap into our strengths. Once those are well developed, we use our remaining time and effort to shore up any weaknesses. Hikaru explains these ideas to Doubblade and Petalil, then continues. After all, once you've improved your weaknesses, your opponent may misjudge you, thinking this Pokémon shouldn't be that fast, or shouldn't have that kind of power. Combining those shored-up weaknesses with your strong innate talents is the secret to becoming truly formidable. It's like in the earliest generations of Pokémon games, Gen 1 and 2, where the maximum effort values weren't 252 but a whopping 65,000. In this real-world setting, a Pokémon's diligent effort is surely rewarded. There's no such 252 limit. Indeed, we previously saw mention of maxing out in 4, but no specific numbers were given. Using game terms, maybe the maximum 4 is 31. But if it's the real Pokémon world, who knows? In the very first generations, the maximum for was just 15. IVs are natural talent, EVs are hard work. True greatness combines talent, sweat, and a bit of luck. You. Petty. Dowblade and Petilil both understand Hikaru's reasoning. They focus intently on the wooden statue. Dowblade floats forward, closing its two eyes, recalling scattered memories from long ago. Dowblade once stayed in some ancient kingdom and seems to hold a special regard for the word ideal. Seeing Petilil fight so earnestly, it quickly acknowledged her that might be a kind of chivalric spirit, even though Hunch itself was not a knight back then. The wooden carving begins to glow brilliantly, once again shining like a tiny sun. The ancient wood carving responds to the Pokémon's wish, revealing its power. Power revealed, Dowblade's attack 4 has reached its maximum. Yoab. You. Dowblade feels its blades growing sharper. And there's also the Arceus statue. Hikaru recalls the Arceus stone sculpture. Stone carvings can let a Pokémon learn a move that normally requires evolving first, and they can also help with egg hatching. But since this isn't a daycare, that second function isn't useful here. Maybe he needs to wait a bit longer, until Dowblade and Petilil grow stronger, before having them interact with the Arceus statue. Speaking of which, if Dowblade were to learn King's Shield. Actually, that little shield it has right now still isn't complete, so it can't really block anything yet. According to the Pokédex description, it's not sturdy enough to endure attacks. While indoors, Dowblade already noticed the stone carving and attempted to touch it, but Hikaru stopped it. Meanwhile, he also carved a new wooden Arceus statue out of a large piece of lumber. Unfortunately, while the stone version had instantly upgraded to a premium piece, the wooden one didn't undergo any changes. Perhaps the wooden statue needs special materials and brand new techniques, just like how the ancient stone statues require ruined stone or ancient rock. So for now, that wooden statue is basically useless. It would exhibit power for Arceus, but where is Arceus anyway? And does Arceus even need a wooden carving to gain more power? If I post this for sale online, people are bound to complain it doesn't work, accusing me of fraud. Maybe I'll just sell it to Valo, pull one over on him for some cash. Tomorrow, I'll head into the forest to collect lumber in Tough Oregon. Chapter 40. Next week, Event 4, Warhammer, starting as a planetary governor. 200 PS equals +1 extra chapter. June 25th, clear weather. As planned yesterday, Hikaru is heading into the outer forest to gather wood. High-quality wood will be used for carving wooden sculptures, while common lumber is for firewood. The workshop's stock of firewood is running low. Hikaru takes along the stone sculptures of both Dowblade and Petilil, straps on a wooden frame for carrying firewood, and grabs his lumber axe. Yoo X. Dowblade waves its red sashes toward Petilil before drifting after Hikaru. In the evenings, Petilil rarely goes inside the house. Even when Hikaru invites her, she says she feels more comfortable in the soil. Going indoors doesn't give her the same sensation. Hikaru knows this relates to the knowledge he bestowed on this land. Thanks to the fertile land effect, the place brims with vitality, so for Petilil, who loves being in the soil, staying outside is more comfortable than going indoors. Okay then, I'll leave the place to you. Last night, Hikaru explained the plan in writing and told the two Pokémon. Petilil lifts her little skirt edges, trying hard to mimic a waving motion, while the 3 leaves on her head sway in the breeze. Petty. The sooner you go, the sooner you'll be back. There aren't any wild Pokémon around here to worry about, and only Diglett ever come by the house, though they usually remain in the village once the tilling season ends. Plus, if some Pokémon did show up, Petilil could use Sunny Day and Solar Beam to drive it away. Petilil balls up the hem of her skirt like a tiny fist. She feels she's in top shape right now, afraid of no one. As soon as Hikaru and Dowblade head into the forest, that same Pokémon that had been secretly following Petilil quietly slips from near the workshop into the forest as well. Petilil, meanwhile, turns around in confusion. There it is again, that strange sense of being watched. Wait, it's gone? They pass a small creek of snowmelt and enter the sun-dappled outer forest. This area is merely the edge of the Shendu Forest's zone of influence. No powerful Pokémon reside here, and villagers often come to chop firewood. But since it's a bit farther out, the villagers prefer woodlets closer to the village. Hikaru, however, doesn't see any abandoned woodlets around. Perhaps they lie in another direction from where he's walking. Let's just cut trees around here. So he thinks. He picks a spot that's not easily noticed and buries half of Petalil's stone sculpture at the roots of a fairly large tree. The sculpture can spur trees to regenerate quickly. Moreover, in this world, trees already grow fast by nature. As soon as Hikaru places the statue, he senses a strange vitality emanating around certain nearby trees. It's hard to describe, but he figures it's due to having made the symbolic tablet, which boosted his mental acuity, thus allowing him to notice these unusual changes in the environment. Trees, too, are living things. When their vitality shifts, he can feel it. The forest around him rustles as though stirred by a breeze. It's like they're trying to talk. Right, maybe I'll try that psychic training Kazuki mentioned, though it's daytime. Hikaru stares intently at one of the trees for a while. Slowly focusing, he seems to hear the voice of the woods. But in an instant of distraction, his concentration breaks, and that curious feeling disappears. Hey? It really worked. It's just ordinary concentration, but Hikaru wonders if the symbolic tablet is granting him a beginner's aptitude for psychic power. Dao Blade, for its part, is perplexed to see Hikaru talking to a tree. Both of its sword forms are itching to try out their blade skills by chopping wood. Alright, let's get started. Dao Blade, use cut. Chop off those thick branches. Yo! Both of Da Blade's blades flash white, delivering a double cut. They slice off a large tree branch in one go. The branch crashes to the ground with a thud. Da Blade's two consciousnesses each feel supremely cool in that split second. Though it was just cutting wood, there's something else too. Suddenly, the two blades turn on each other in rivalry, letting out a yo up. And you? Left sword, I definitely struck faster just now. Right sword, clearly I was the faster one. Well, even split into two minds, it's still got that same dramatic personality, Hikaru mutters. Then he instructs them. Don't fight, Dao Blade. Once you evolve, those split minds will merge again. For now, keep using cut. Yoab. You. Both blades respond at once, then glare at each other again. Left sword, you were calling me. I'm the real main body. Right sword, no, you were calling me. I'm the real main body. You're both doing great. Hikaru can't help sweating a little. Fortunately, both swords know their task is most important at the moment, so they keep their rivalry internal. Following Hikaru's instructions, they flash their blades up and down, chopping branches left and right. Chop, chop, chop lumberjack style. Double the speed. Hikaru directs Dao Blade to hew off hefty limbs, while for thinner trunked trees, they simply fell them outright. By midday, they've gathered plenty of wood. Thanks to the Dao Blade stone sculpture, they have a plus 5% faster chopping speed, and though that might not sound huge, it noticeably cuts the overall time when you do it for hours. The forest rustles gently. Petalil's statue continues releasing its vitality. Hikaru thinks about using his knowledge to turn this part of the woods into a fertile land. Along with Petalil's stone carving, the forest would continuously regrow, allowing repeated harvesting. Ordinarily, logging requires rotating the logging area to avoid deforestation. Overharvesting one spot can devastate the ecosystem. But in the Pokémon world, forests recover quickly. Ordinary logging probably wouldn't impede the tree's growth much anyway. In Johto, near Azalea Town, there's that well-known charcoal shop. They keep far-fetched and gather premium lumber from Celebai's sacred oak groves, ensuring clean water and fresh air. It's amazing. That charcoal shop also appears in the game's The Little Side Story where you chase after far-fetched. Speaking of which, I've been burning through plenty of wood myself. Maybe I should try making charcoal this time. Though it won't match that famous far-fetched shop, it should help me learn about crafting and firing techniques related to flames. As Hikaru and Dao Blade venture deeper into the forest, the small, grass-green Pokémon from before appears once again near Petalil's stone carving, silently watching. Radiating a gentle glow, she curiously pulls the statue from the soil, turning it over and over to examine it. It can actually help trees regrow? She blinks, her eyes brimming with intrigue. That human is truly amazing. Johto region, Azalea Town. Steven was the first to spot that Hikaru's workshop had new updates, so he quickly logged in to take a look only to discover they were just small statues. Though the stone sculptures were described as having special effects, they appeared rather dubious at first glance. Stone carvings. Indeed, from everything he's learned so far, that Craftsman's family trade does revolve around carving. Stephen paid a visit to Mr. Steele, who isn't too familiar with the Hone champion personally. Yet when he hears Stephen is inquiring about a certain craftsman, Mr. Steele immediately realizes the reason. Oh, you must be talking about him. Last time, Bugsy came by asking questions about these matters. I never expected even Hone's champion would come searching. Mr. Steele is a bit puzzled. From what he recalls, Hikaru's craft skills weren't particularly famous, just ordinary, really. Moreover, Bugsy and the others seemed more interested in special stones than the craftsman himself. Maybe that kid's changed careers to selling materials now? Still, the fact these people hold him in such high regard is probably a good thing. If they become familiar with him, maybe they'll visit Mr. Steele's shop more often, too. Many craftsmen without significant renown or unique techniques rely on a base of loyal customers for their income. He used to be quite skilled at carving wood sculptures, stone sculptures, all that. It was originally a Johto craft style, but his family later moved way out to Sinnoh. Then, some years back, I heard his father died. I'm not sure where he is now, rumor says he came back near Johto. Mr. Steele reflects. Craftsmen moving to other regions is perfectly normal. Johto has its own famous carver's price of Mahogany Town is a renowned ice sculpture artist. Trying to outdo him in sculpture would be nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Sinnoh is also very fond of various carving arts, relocating there was probably a good idea. I see. Thank you very much. Stephen takes the information he needs and departs Mr. Steele's place, heading for Azalea Gym to meet Bugsy. Once Stephen's gone, Mr. Steele, still curious, wants to check on Hikaru's online workshop store to see how his skills have progressed. But he himself isn't very savvy online, so he calls on his granddaughter. Chihuai. Help Grandpa follow this online shop, I don't know how to use it.
Thanks for listening.